All right, folks, welcome to the long-awaited, maybe long-awaited, second episode of the In the Trenches podcast, one that focuses on Battalion. Of course, you've already seen the first one. It was about a month ago. I'm Dust. With me is Davy and LeX. If you want to know who we are, go watch the first one. Don't have time for all those introductions right now. We got stuff to talk about. But I do want to just start off and say, how have you guys been since the first episode? How are things going? Small
Great.
talk. Awesome. Thank you for that loud gain microphone. That just ripped my ears.
Absolutely. Actually, it
Was
didn't
this
even.
was this not done at the audio check? Screaming?
Yeah, we didn't do screaming tests, I'm afraid.
You can always edit it in post.
Yeah.
Just drop it down to like 10% volume right there. You'll be all right.
People can just manually do their
Um,
volume slider on YouTube. It'll be fine.
yeah, there's a section of the video right here. Just you want to mute the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
I've been okay, Dust. Strikes and gutters, ups and downs, man. Like, I don't know. This game plays a lot of games with my heart,
Indeed,
which
it
is something
does.
we're going to get into in this episode.
Also, apologies now for any audio or production issues. I am filming this like from Kiev in the Starlighter Studios. I'm not on my normal setup or anything like that, so might be a little bit of tomfuckery going on in this podcast, but we're gonna try to muscle through it. So basically, what are we gonna do with this podcast is we kind of broke this episode up into some different sections. So just to give you an idea of what you're going to hear, and I'll do timestamps below so you can skip around. We're going to start just talking about the state of the game, and then we're going to get into some gameplay change talk from like the March 8th and March 16th updates. Then we'll get into some map discussion, once again referring to the March 8th and March 16th updates. And then we'll do a little bit of a conclusion, just talking a little bit about the esports side of things, right? So that's kind of how we're going to break down the show. But I thought it best to start with like the state of the game because there has been a lot of chatter in the community, in various communities and subsections of the community, depending on where you hang out at, that have been, talking about the game. And some people are really positive, some people are really negative, some people are somewhere in a gray area between where they have hopes, but they have concerns, obviously. And I think one of the focal points it seems to center around, or the thing that gets quoted most often, seems to be player count. Like, that seems to be the biggest thing. People are concerned that the player count has really dropped off. Obviously, I think it's pretty easy to tell that it is most likely a side effect of just like how rough the EA launch was, and I think that scared off a lot of people. If we could rewind time and the March 8th update was the first version of EA that ever got played, maybe things would be different. And we all know that there was like issues with Google that were involved and all that good stuff. So I don't want to get too much in that. We kind of talked about that already in the last episode. But player count still seems to be a topic that gets talked about a lot, and just like how the development of the game is going so far is getting talked about a lot. And I'm going to bring up a specific post that Aerox did in a second. But before I do that, I just wanted to kind of get your takes so far on like what you thought about, I guess, like the state of the game and this player count discussion that keeps getting brought up, and just kind of get your take before we bring in that Aerox post.
I think the player count discussion is like too early to be discussing until the developers do a real marketing push and have the game in a more stable state. Then you can't really be shitting on the player numbers yet. It's a work in progress, and well, the real marketing commercial side of things hasn't happened yet. It hasn't been publicized to the greater audience. It's just the real hardcore people right now playing, who are like a lot of them also involved in the beta and alpha, I guess. So I would just look at it as a prolonged beta or something with more people though, but I wouldn't be bitching on the player counts just yet. It's a bit early.
Lex?
Without giving the developers the chance to really promote the game, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think from somebody who, perhaps like from a standpoint of someone who doesn't necessarily play the game a whole lot, is just kind of like looking to get into it, maybe compete somewhere along down the road when leagues come around or whatever else. There's a lot of that in NA at least, where people are either halfway in, halfway out, and there's just like easy excuses every step of the way to just like write it off and not really pay attention to it. Fuck off and go play Fortnite or PUBG or whatever else people want to do. I mean, that's their own prerogative, but I think, like Davey said, it's just mostly hardcore players that are really going to be testing the game day in, day out, making Reddit posts, trying to find bugs, find solutions for the devs, whatever else, or just like start competing early and get a head start. I think there's a fair share of those people that would tell you immediately, like, hey, I think the game's actually obviously on one hand like the most polished it's been, which it's nowhere near polished. It's nowhere near complete as far as like a refined game is concerned for their full launch and what they're planning to have for it, judging by the roadmap. But I'm still enjoying the game. I think that's something that is a demographic that gets kind of overlooked, is the people that actually are out there playing and enjoying the game. You know, player count certainly is something that will scare people. And I think, you know, when you're talking about just the steady decline over and over and over again, you see day in, day out, there's like Reddit posts and people talking about, oh, geez, it's 2 a.m. PST in NA and there's only 24 people online. Like, oh my God, you see that kind of stuff a lot. And like, you know, to be fair, a lot of it is warranted. There was a lot of, like you said, Dust, a lot of bumpy starts from the updates to straight up just the early access launch. And it definitely kind of stopped people from being able to just immediately embrace it if they weren't somehow involved already from alpha or otherwise. So I think ultimately, like, I get it, but like Davey had brought up, man, like I think part of the frustration now is that people assumed the March, and I was the #1 trumpeter of like, oh my gosh, dude, March 8th update, it's gonna have a bunch of bug fixes, which I mean, to be fair, it did, but like I was expecting the marketing to kind of be coming following that in the coming months, and all that kind of just seems to be, they're keeping their eggs all in one basket, or they're not keeping their eggs in one basket for one giant update that came too early or something like that. I think they're waiting for the right moment, which I respect. And as a competitive player, is a little frustrating, but you know, understandably, we're going to need to be a little bit patient if you're still hoping to play this game.
Yeah, I guess I sit somewhere in the middle of you two, by the way. Like, I know Davey's going to, like, maybe follow up a little bit more, but maybe just to give you something else to feed off of is, like, I can understand where you're coming from, Davey, where it's, like, you know, it's a little too early to worry too much about player count. But it is still kind of rough to see, like, how much initial hype this game had and how deflated it got after, like, the rough early access launch. I feel like there was a lot of people hyping this game up, and it did really well in, like, the pre-release stages of hyping itself up and putting its name out there and getting people understand what it was going to be, and like getting the attention of the old Call of Duty crowd and even other people who just like those sorts of games. They did a great job there. It's just unfortunate the early access had such a rough patch the first week or whatever, or really the first 2 days. After the first 2 days, a lot of it got sorted out. But yeah, so it's understandable that made it take a huge hit, and so player count was low. And then Davey, you know, I think you make a good point. Like, yeah, it's still a little too early to worry too much about it. It's still very early on. But I think to add to that, though, I feel like there has to be some bare minimum that we're hitting in order to be able to test the game properly. Like, yes, this is a testing stage. Like, yes, this is early development. I understand it's early access and what that means. But we talked about this in the first episode, though, actually. I think I was the one who might have brought it up. Is like the perception of what early access means for people is much different depending on, you know, how familiar you are with game development. And if you work in the industry or not, or if you're just like a consumer that plays games. Like, people, like the difference between beta and early access, a lot of people, when they make that leap, they think, oh, early access is like a full game, I just get early access to it. But in reality, it's basically a glorified beta. That's how I look at it. So there's a difference there in perception. But then again, like I was saying to, you know, I think I even tweeted directly at Brammerton whenever he had like a tweet about, you know, it's fine that we have a small player count. We're just focused on developing. We'll build it up as it's time to. It's like, yeah, but you still need to have enough to where I can queue matchmaking and get games. And for the longest time in North America, you couldn't really do that. And we'll talk about that in a second, because I know that there's been a push to try to kind of remedy that in North America by community members. But yeah, like, I guess I'm in this gray area in between both of you where, yes, I'm okay with the low player count because of how early on we are. But at the same time, I feel like, yeah, I can understand why people are pessimistic, because even if you love the game, it's hard to play it.
It feels like NA is overly unoptimistic, or at least over the past couple of weeks it has been. I mean, we watched literally since the March 8th update, I think we went from having like 20 active teams in NA to like maybe 5. And that is like, whew, if you're trying to be a competitive player, which I am, like you're not going to practice a whole lot. You're playing the same teams. Signing up to the tournaments feels like, oh, well, we're going to be playing the same people we practice against every day. It's not going to feel really fulfilling if you go and beat these guys or lose, whichever one. I mean, you're not learning a whole lot. But you kind of touched on it right there, Dust, where NA the matchmaking servers were broken even past, what is publicly known as kind of like the issues with early access in the first updates. You couldn't queue matchmaking. I think unranked worked for a period of time and then stopped working. I only got done, I think, 4 placements before competitive broke.
Yeah, I only got done
I
2.
think that was like the second, and then it was like the second update after March 8th was when the server started working again. So if you think about like things like player count, you're basically ignoring an entire region that just couldn't play.
Yeah.
Essentially, like so the player count, EU might be on a steady decline, but NA has just been like flatlined the entire time with the same 50 to 100 people that have been wanting to play this game day in, day out.
Right.
So they go queue up for scrims or pugs or whatever else. So I mean, there is like you have to take the player count with a little bit of a grain of salt, and some people just refuse to do that. It's understandable, but like you said, we'll see.
I think that you have to have a certain mentality right now. And I remember between the alphas, there was always like a month or whatever between those weekends, and you couldn't play the game. And like there was loads of people that even said like, just give me an offline version, let me run around on the maps, let me just shoot some walls, whatever, shoot the guns. I think you should look at current situation as that. You get to do all that. You even get to scrim and play some cups and stuff. You are in that situation for like 10 euros or whatever. It's like it's nothing. So think of it as that way, and just be focused that the full game is going to be launching in February 2019.
Yeah, some people are a little extreme, aren't they? Like, some people are acting like, oh, we got robbed. Bruh, like, they already released 2 major updates since you bought the game, like, that were pretty substantial. They haven't robbed you yet. Like, yes, if the game still looks like this a year from now, maybe you did get robbed. But, like, if people act like they're not communicating at all, they're not updating at all, maybe you're not happy with the updates, maybe you don't think they do enough, maybe they change things you don't want to be changed, or the changes they make you don't like, sure, but you can't sit there and say that nothing is being done. That is so ridiculous. Like, that's the opposite extreme.
They weren't there back in the day paying 50 euros, 60 bucks, whatever, for Call of Duty 4 and getting 2 updates in 4 years, They were not there.
It's bizarre to me because I even see like COD veterans, like people that I respect, that are just like, dude, COD 2 was the god tier of all games. And I'm just like,
true.
I agree. COD 2 was the best. And they're like, this game is so trash, it'll never compare to COD 2. And I'm just like, early access has been out for a month and a half, and we're drawing this conclusion now. Like what?
People don't realize what the earliest alphas look like.
Work for you?
Yeah.
Ugh. No, I mean, like, the game has. If you played any of the alpha ever, like, you will see that this game has come miles from where it was last year.
I can vouch for this. I played the early alphas, and so did Davy, and this game has definitely come a long way. So that I think. Yeah.
So impressive to me that that the devs have got so much of that working to this point. I mean, sure, they definitely had some pitfalls when it came to actual launch for early access,
sure.
but still the game looks so much more refined even in the span of like 6 months, and it's scary awesome.
And I guess that's the thing, like the community can't see that, right? Like the community can't see what we've seen in that sense. Like a lot of them weren't around for that long. But I guess you just have to kind of take, whether you want to trust us or not, you have to understand that we come from a perspective where we've seen what they've done in 6 months from alpha to now, right? So it's been such a huge change. And so that makes us a little bit more optimistic than maybe some people who haven't got to go through that path. But anyway, Davey, what were you going to say?
I like the game already as it is, to be honest. I'm really positive that it's still going to be improving a lot, and it's like the mechanics are there. You can shoot people, you can do the one taps, everything. It's fun. And if you enjoy it, just play and don't be whining about player counts. Well, of course, if you can't play because of the low player counts, then you got a good point to do that.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, there needs to be a minimum threshold.
I'm spoiled. I can get games all the time.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I agree with Davey. Like, and this is what I've been telling people a lot whenever they've asked me about this, because it's not like I'm some fucking bulkhead shield and I'm on their payroll or something. Not at all. Like, I stand to gain nothing, really. I guess if the game takes off and I cast it, then maybe. But in reality, I'm not getting any direct, like, value out of what happens to this game. But the bottom line is what I tell everyone.
We're all getting rich and famous.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
grinding
Look
my
at my
pockets.
finished
Thanks,
building.
kid.
It's all Battalion money.
All that Battalion
I don't
money.
even have walls yet.
The point I was going to say is I tell everyone that the core game itself is great. Yeah, there's bugs. Yeah, there's things that maybe need to be balanced better. People will fight till the end of time about whether certain weapons need to be changed or certain maps need to be tweaked, and everyone's going to have differing opinions on that. But the core game and then the core mechanics, if you realize, okay, yeah, these things will get fixed, these bugs or whatever, the core game is great. My issue has always just been like the infrastructure around it, like the matchmaking system, particularly in North America. That's been the real issue for me. That's been my real like roadblock in my head. Like, crap, man, I wish I could just queue and play this game. But that's something that's trying to be worked on, I think, going forward.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We are in early access. Now we see those issues, and now they can fix it.
Yeah.
So when the game comes out in February 2019, it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, so hopefully we can see and I think we will see a push for player count soon to try to at least kind of get better testing. And I'll come back around to this a little bit later, by the way. But first, I wanted to introduce this Aerox post that came up on Reddit, because I think that this will be kind of a vehicle we can use to further discuss this, because I feel like, for those of you who don't know, Aerox put a post up on the Reddit for Battalion. And if you don't know who Aerox is, he basically is like an old Call of Duty player. He's played in some of the online tournaments for Europe for like Blitzkrieg Battle and some of the other stuff. Some of his teams have done okay.
Got to the final of the first one, I think.
Yeah. So he's like a notable name from the European community as far as like a competitive player in the scene. And he put out this post, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to give like a TLDR version of what he was saying, because I think it's kind of representative of what a lot of people were feeling and thinking. So I felt that he kind of laid out what a lot of people thought. So that's why I wanted to use it as representative of it. So basically, he talks about how the game had lots of issues in early access, and he felt like it went into early access too early, and that there was way too many problems, and it should have stayed in beta longer. And he says that it's fine because it is early access, and it doesn't mean that it's a finished product, but a lot of people do perceive it that way. And so he thought that the way to kind of solve this problem would be to go back to the title of an open beta, because that means that there would be less expectations, and that whole perspective of being finished wouldn't be there anymore. Then reward those who already bought the game to kind of make up for the fact that you're going back into open beta, and then eventually come back, obviously, into a paid option. He also said that they should focus on casuals more and not to worry about esports right now, because, you know, they really need to get the casual audience going. He then went on to say that use your already existing transparency to help rebuild your brand in open beta, and then introduce it back into esports later once the game gets more polished. And he concluded by basically saying, and I'll quote this directly, it's just, I'm just someone who thoroughly enjoys the game, wants it to succeed, and thinks that who knows how it might be able to be achieved. What I do know is that the current state of the game is dire and needs to be fixed ASAP. So before I bring up Brammer's response to this, because Brammer did make a rather lengthy response to this post, what were kind of your thoughts about Aerox's post when you saw it? Like, did it kind of touch you and like the sentiment that you kind of had about the game? Did you disagree, agree? Like, what did you think about this post?
I'll go first this time, Davy.
Yes, please. Can you like give me the Reddit link to the?
I will try working on that.
I've read it, but you know.
I will work on that for you as Lex.
Days ago.
I'll work on it as Lex does his thing.
I had read the post, and yeah, I think what you said was pretty dead on, Dust, where it really encapsulated a lot of what I kept seeing on Reddit, and just like the community attitude, where, you know, a lot of people are unsure of whether or not the devs are making the right decisions or making the right calls, and kind of just not necessarily doubting, but certainly questioning a lot of the decisions that were made, and there wasn't a whole lot of clarity behind all of that. And if you have to be paying attention pretty hard to really be able to you have to be following Brammer on Twitter and be searching every one of his replies to get a real picture of what was going on. And I know some people in the community were more in the know than others, and some information traveled through the grapevine when others didn't have access to it. And so I made I was just like half asleep when I read that post, and there was a lot of NA drama going on during that time period, and just like, oh my gosh, it was so depressing. Like, you couldn't play the game. Nobody wanted to cooperate and help improve the game at all. And so I made a really trolly post, and I got 1 million downvotes for it. Deserved. I apologize to the EU scene. I made a joke about I don't know. I was pissed because I was just like, you're demanding an apology for the devs that are like being openly communicable and trying to push a game in early access that's been out for less than 2 months. Like Aerox wasn't off the mark. He made a lot of good points, but a lot of the responses in the thread were just like.
He also did it in a
drove me
respectable way. It's not like he was out there
Oh, no,
taking
Aerox,
shots
yeah,
at
he
people.
was-
Like he did it in a very
No, I mean, it was a
calm,
good post.
collected, reasonable. Yeah. So.
And it would have been a bad look of a post if Brammer hadn't responded. I feel like with both things in perspective now,
Because it caught
if
so
you
much
read through them
traction.
both- Oh yeah, if you read through them both, like you would be like, you would go from being like, wow, I'm depressed, this sucks, like I really hope this game isn't as dead as it feels like reading this post, and then you read Brammer's response and you're just like, oh my gosh, oh okay, like fair enough, that was well said, and you know we haven't gotten to that part of the conversation yet, but that was my thoughts on it. Was just
Yeah.
like, it was something that I was aware of and what I understood, and I respected his opinion to the point where it was like, you know, he brings up some good points about just, you know, the general feeling of the community. It encapsulated a lot of that.
And again, I feel like it's very important to note that the reason why we are where we are and why the player count is the way that it is nothing that we can do about anymore. It's gone. Like the early access launch had problems. There's no going back and rewinding time and fixing that. And I think that obviously if it was up to Bulkhead and up to Joe Brammer, that wouldn't have happened, right? Everything would have went swimmingly, servers would have worked, and the launch would have gone a lot more smoothly. Now, the dev team has to play recovery mode. Like, and everyone in the community needs to understand that, guys, you don't realize like how slow of a start we got because of that one particular day. One day changed everything about how the beginnings of this game would go. And so now it's about playing catch up. So I think that needs to be stressed, but now it's about what can we do, basically, to try to still move forward and let that be just a hurdle rather than a brick wall in front of our face. So I just kind of want to put that on out there.
That's the other thing that I keep seeing is like, you mentioned it even earlier in this podcast that there was like so much hype behind this game and it sold so many copies and there's so much hype behind it. And then when I was playing alpha and even like before closed beta, I didn't ever expect that there was going to be that many copies sold or that there was that much hype. But that's like the power of streamers, man. Like if you get the word out to a Shroud or someone like that you know there's a big game on the way and they should play it or something like that, you know, it's gonna get a lot of exposure.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing and a curse.
Like the worst exposure you could ever ask for. So
yep.
You know, it's almost better now that like the game is slowed down back to what I think Bulkhead originally planned their roadmap for, which is like, you know, we're going to take our time with it and slowly update the game until full release.
Yeah.
And they weren't sure at that point. They're like, oh my God, like so many people are playing our game. Suddenly we need to make it playable right now. And now that doesn't matter, like you said. And a lot of that stuff's in the past.
Yeah.
And I guess the only thing that I have to really say about it is just like, a lot of people want to just backseat dev Bulkhead, and you know I'm not a game dev, so any perspective I have is just as someone who works in the industry and consults for a lot of these companies, and I've you know maybe have some perspective that some people don't, but at the end of the day I'm just blown away at some of the attitudes that some people have towards Bulkhead. And it's like, do you want a dev team to be transparent and tell you constantly like what's going on, what's coming up in the future, what they're working on, bugs that they're aware of and are being fixed? Like I think we were clocking in around 2.5 years, maybe 3 of CoD 1 before people kind of gave up on the whole fixing left lean shit. Like that, it's just like you can't have it both ways, where you know you either have a AAA title that takes a couple of years for the game to come out and it's a finished product when it gets released, or you're doing this.
Yeah.
And you get to be there for every step of the way, and some people aren't on board for that, which is understandable. But
So Davey, did you want to pitch in here?
So.
I also think what's important to let people know who don't know yet. So yeah, the first day, Shroud and Summit and some big streamers streamed it, but Bellcat actively asked them to not stream it again.
Yeah.
So, you know, as just to make the point stronger about them not doing marketing yet.
Yeah.
They literally asked them to not play it yet because they just need to get it better before pushing it to a bigger audience.
So any thoughts about this Aerox post, Davey?
Oh yeah. Well, again, like before before you start typing up such a post, I think there's still the mentality issue that we talked about earlier. That it's early access. There's shit gonna go wrong. It's just be happy that you can play the game at this point. So if he would think like that, then he probably wouldn't have posted this. What I also see him mentioning here is to drop everything esports related and let third parties worry about hosting LANs. I mean, that's a good point if there's a situation where, let's say, one of their coders is focusing on esports right now. But that's not the situation at Bulkhead. They just have someone who does that. So them stopping them not helping third party or the community making LANs like this Galaxy LAN, that's not gonna help anyone. They can just keep on doing that if you ask me. They just have someone to do that and who does not code the game. So it's like a weird thing to ask, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that does bring up a bigger point about how like people don't realize that like certain people have certain specialized responsibilities that have no impact on other things that are going on simultaneously. So if one person's working on marketing the game, there's another person working on actually fixing the game, and those are two separate people. So don't get past at the marketing guy when he's marketing and like fix your game first, bruh. Like I'm not a coder. Like my job's to market this game. A lot of that's like game wide, by the way. Like every gaming community has that misunderstanding. But just wanted to highlight that real quick as Davy ponders his next thought.
Yeah, I actually I think it would be a cool idea if there would be a Bulkhead supported league with like seasons, but the seasons are in between the updates, so you can let's
Davy.
say
It's a wonderful idea.
What?
No, just keep going. I like this idea.
So
No,
this
I've heard
like
rumors,
let's say
I'm just letting you finish.
Oh, okay. So let's say this season would be like the invasion season, let's say, whatever, the invasion map being included in the update or whatever. So people know they're testing that patch in a competitive setup, and you have streams going on, and you have some content going out, but knowing that it's testing a patch. I think that would be cool, and that would keep teams incentivized to crack. So we have more than 5 teams in NA.
I hear you. All right, so
I mean, yeah, it's just a symptom. But we'll go ahead, Dust.
So I want to bring in Joe Brammer's response now, so we have like the full discussion going on, because we talked about what Aerox said, and now Joe Brammer basically dissects Aerox's post point by point, and I'm going to TLDR this as well. And Davey, there's a link in that Reddit thread that you can click on. Just making sure you're up to speed, my man. But anyway, the TLDR.
You gotta wing it.
Yeah, so the TLDR version of Brammer's post, but you should all go read it, especially if you're super interested in Battalion. This is definitely the post for you. Basically, Brammer said that they had to launch early access, basically, and that the idea of going back, the idea of delaying early access didn't make any sense because essentially they didn't have enough players. And going to early access is what was required in order to bring in more players so that way they could properly test everything, which obviously is what caused the matchmaking issue because releasing early access did get them the players that they needed to test matchmaking, and they otherwise may not have ever even realized that that was an issue had they have not gotten all those players in and had it break and realized, oh shit, we need to do this to get matchmaking working and everything like that. And then he goes in and talk about the whole Google situation and how there was an issue with that service, and that's what caused everything to screw up in early access and matchmaking and all that. It goes back into that again. We've already talked about that in the first episode. So basically, the point is to sum up, he basically said to Aerox's point about you went EA too early. He's like, no, we had to get players to test the game because when we stayed in beta and alpha, we didn't have enough people. So made that point. I thought that expressed it pretty well. And then as far as going back to open beta, he said you can't just drop early access title and go back to open beta. It's just not really feasible. There's plenty of data showing that going free and then going back to paid again doesn't really work. And he's certainly open to doing free weekends and doing other things to the game to make it more accessible. Maybe certain aspects of the game will be free, like maybe you can play arcade for free or something like that, but then you have to pay if you want to do competitive. So talking about opening up the game, like in the future, some aspects of it being free to kind of address this whole thing. He does then go on to say that he'll happily admit they fucked up when it came to casuals, and that himself and Howard take the blame for that, and that they're addressing this with a new Arcade 2.0. That's going to be a lot of content, And I quote him as basically saying, polishing what we have, improving the modes, fixing the bugs, and then issuing new maps specifically designed for arcade, not just maps jammed in there that are from other modes. And so he's looking to really revamp arcade to try to go to casuals. Then he mentions on esports about leaving it to their companies. He says we can't because we have more money than those guys have. So in order for like these tournaments to be supported better, because a lot of this stuff is grassroots right now, you know, them having the money is what can help make the events actually happen. Uses an example of Blitzkrieg Battle about how they helped them build a new website, and obviously they're doing the event at I-62. And then he basically says that he needs to keep pushing the esports side of things because that's how you market the game, which is what everyone is fucking calling for anyway, is to market the game to get more players. Well, guess what? Esports is probably your best marketing tool, because that's when you put streams out there and people watch the game and say, oh, this is pretty neat. Let me buy that game. So it's basically like, bruh, you want marketing, guess what? That's what esports is. Like, it's a way to market it. And he says, for us, the major, so the you know, major that everyone's been rumoring, which is pretty much confirmed at this point, just don't know when and where it is yet. He says, for us, the major is a marketing tool. Social ads are okay. They work in some instances, but a large prize pool with high production quality, social promotion, timed with war chest event, Steam sale, free weekends, and a major game update, that's marketing. So basically addressing esports and marketing all at the same time. And then he also made this note that actually kind of concerns me a little bit, and I'll get your take on it. But he basically kind of ends by saying, we didn't make a game, we made a series of tools that can be used in the future. Let's call it round 2. Ding ding, can't say anymore. So he throws that thing in there and basically says that for the future, the game was definitely broken at launch, but that, you know, they made an ambitious attempt to have matchmaking, even though they're an indie thing. And if the concurrents keep dropping, that's fine. They have a big launch planned, something big with Face It, and he wouldn't really comment any further than that. So that's Joe Brammer's response to Aerox's post. My quick comments on this before I let you guys think, because I know that was rather long-winded, but trust me, the actual post was much longer than what I just said. But that was about as TLDR as I can get. First off,
TLDR for the TLDR.
Yeah, we need a second TLDR. Dust, get on it.
Afraid not. I was just going to say that my thoughts on this were, I think he addressed the early access and the open beta thing pretty well by basically saying he needed to go EA to get players and he can't really go back to open beta. I think that was like a fair response that made sense. And then good to hear that they're trying to go after casuals with a new arcade mode with better maps suited for arcade and all that good stuff. That's good to hear. I think his point about esports does ring true. It is a marketing tool. So, and again, like Davey was saying earlier, your esports guy isn't your coder anyway, so it's not like they're, you know, leaving game development behind to focus on esports. It's separate people, so I think that that's important to note. But my one concern was the whole sequel thing, but I think we'll save that for later. First, I just want you guys to kind of tell me what you think about all the other stuff from that.
I think the arcade thing is actually pretty important, that they make a really good arcade. I think a lot of people are just quitting when they see domination or capture the flag popping up. Probably like TDM or a DM mode should be in there, so people just can go in and frag and not worry about flags and whatever. Because it's like a different feeling when you're playing. Like people are playing different when you're doing that. I think it's important to have a good TDM or DM option in the game to have people, you know.
So basically have filters so you can choose what you're playing. Because I think some people do like CTF and domination, but some people want to avoid it. So being able to filter might be something. But keep going.
I'm pretty sure most people want to be playing TDM and DM.
I actually have friends who said they strictly played Battalion to play arcade and play like domination and shit. Like one of my friends' favorite thing was to play domination on Outpost. It's like one of his favorite things to do. So I was like, okay. So I think being able to pick what you want is important. But go on.
Well, yeah, that was it.
Anything else from Brammer's post that struck you?
The Brammer's post is like another, again, showing that it again shows that the developers are listening to the community. They're open, and that's like a good thing about that post. And yeah, that's like one of the most important things, I guess. I don't remember everything that was said, but I just remember afterwards reading it and being like, yeah, that's a good response to Aerox's post, and should clear a lot of people their opinions about the game and the state.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
I don't know. Did Dust just get mugged? What happened?
Yeah.
don't know, like there's people.
He got
I'm at
shot
a
by-
I'm at a
yeah.
Starlighter office, like a bunch of other people running around,
you're
so you
back.
have to excuse
You're
me
back.
on that.
Here
But
I am.
I was gonna say, Lex, did you want to comment now on Joe Brammer's
Yeah.
response? Go ahead.
Like I said, when I had read the Aerox post, it wasn't so much his post. It was just that a lot of the people that were quick to jump on the Ragon bulkhead train, like quickly had pie on their face. Where when Joe made that response, where like a lot of those open-ended questions that were posed kind of just immediately got answered, and there was some clarity there. And certainly, like, I understand completely why some of the things that were mentioned in the post regarding stuff like Face It, their plans for esports, whatever else, kind of needed to stay in the dark, because if you just have that stuff out in the open and people aren't asking for it, it just kind of is a bad look in general. But the fact is, like, the community's at this point where, you know, if you have a core player base that is going to stick around and is going to continue playing the game, you do, I'm sure, as a dev, like, just want to be able to tell them everything, and just like let them know that, like, hey, game's still in early access. We're only a month and a half in. Like, here's what we got on the table. I can't tell you a whole lot more than that. And you know, I think anywhere from the new game modes with Wartide and Arcade, like, I am so I know, actually, I can't say that. I am very excited for Wartide 2. Arcade 2.0, I mean, like you said, there are people that, you know, if you're going to be playing an arcade shooter, not everyone wants to be playing Search and Destroy. And that's totally fine with me. Like, if you know, players are out there that want to be hardcore into CTF, be hardcore into just the casual game modes, that's cool. And I won't even call CTF totally casual, because there was always a competitive CTF scene within the Call of Duties of old. So, like, I'm super excited for that stuff to kick off, just because, like, even if you don't enjoy the hardcore kind of set and aid atmosphere where it's pretty rough if you're playing like a ranked match against good players that have like put time into the game, like there's definitely a change of pace needed, I think, for that crowd, and they're working hard on that, and he did actually say something to the effect of, like, we do apologize, we take full responsibility for that, you know, and it's like whatever at this point, because, you know, our perspectives, the three of us, are certainly that, like, okay, we understand that, like, this game's in early access, but if you're a player that's spending $15 and is expecting a finished product, you know, without that clarity coming from the devs, you're thinking, oh my gosh, like, this game is unfinished.
I do have one question for you though, really quick, Lex, because we talked about how, like, he put on the table what he could, and, like, obviously can't give you the full details because maybe in some cases, like, things aren't signed yet, and so therefore you can't make an announcement because things aren't completed, or maybe you're just waiting for the right timing. You know, like, you have a certain date in mind on when you want to release certain information. To ask you this question, just to kind of bounce off of that, just curious your thoughts. I want to stir the pot a little bit here. Do you think at some point maybe you tease too much? Because I feel like we've gotten a lot of teases about Face It. And I think what happens is people keep getting teased, and they're like, well, bro, is anything actually coming from this? Because we keep hearing about it over and over again for weeks. Like we've had so many teases about Face It in particular. Like, it is, and we've also had several teases about the major. And it's like, I feel like at some point you tease so much, and people are like, well, dude, you've been teasing us and you haven't delivered. Like, maybe you do want to tease a little bit. You want to let people know, hey, we do have some stuff in the works, and, like, get people excited and get people, like, realizing, hey, there's something to look forward to. But maybe at some point it's like, all right, man, like, you're dangling this carrot in front of my face a lot right now, and I'm not seeing anything, and it frustrates people. And so it almost has the reversed effect of, like, instead of building hype, it gets people frustrated. So I don't know if that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I hear where you're coming from, especially because when you're talking about, like, things that are being teased and things that, you know, the kind of, like, competitive players may have heard about from the devs themselves.
Because I'll be honest, I thought that this stuff was going to get announced on March 16th when the update came out.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people did.
That's what I'm getting at. But again, that was an update that got a lot of bad PR from inside the community, because a lot of this stuff was broken. It wasn't cleaned up. Like, the maps didn't look good. The lighting wasn't great. Like, there's these kind of, like, refinements that, if you're going to start marketing the game by announcing that stuff, they want to have their game on point, which, like, totally understand. But it does kind of just go from being like, because like I said earlier, and I feel like idiot for it, but like hindsight's 2020. I was the #1 guy that was just like, dude, boys, March 8th, there's some stuff going down, and it's just like it didn't happen, obviously.
Yeah,
so,
people got people got overhyped about this first LAN event. Like I feel like there was a lot of miscommunication about that.
The next thing is you know, like the June update. You see it on Reddit right now. People are like, well, we're all waiting for June. Well, you heard the same thing for March. So like when you're asking people to be patient, certainly there's going to be people that aren't straight out the gate, right? And a competitive community that is kind of like relying on hope for some of those announcements like to come up. You know, there was a period of time when during that March 8th timeframe where I just like would actually go to Brammer's Twitter every day and just be like, and it's not Christmas yet. Okay. You know, like that's what I feel like a lot of people were frustrated by, and why so many teams in such a quick time frame here in NA just like kind of just, you know, cashed it in and said, all right, I'll see you guys later. And even in the past few days, as I'm sure we're going to talk about NA Revival later, like there's people that are coming back and playing unranked, but the competitive players themselves that I'm talking to that had left are all like, well, is competitive working yet? Or is ranked working yet in NA? And the answer is it's working, but nobody's queuing for it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem now. The system works. Now the player population is becoming an issue. And that's why the player number thing is becoming more important, because we do need to hit like a certain number to at least be able to actually play the game. And so I think that's come up a lot.
We're working on it, Dust.
I know. We're going to get there.
But I totally understand that, like, when you actually do make those teases and you come out saying that stuff, you're going to get people's hopes up. But you mentioned it earlier in this podcast, like it's a double-edged sword. I want to know about these things, but even just having the roadmap for Battalion out there is itself a giant teaser, because you're like, well, there's no way they're going to get all this done in a year. Like that's none of this stuff is in the game yet. That's crazy. Like they're making promises they can't keep. You see that mentality constantly on Reddit, and it's just like, well, they're not promising it's all going to work right away, but that's why it's in early access. Like that's the whole purpose of this, is that they can take their time and do it right and put this stuff in the game, and, you know, have it so when the Summits and the Shrouds of the world are actually streaming the game, you know, 20,000 people aren't watching Shroud play Crash to desktop.
Yeah,
I love that game. It's one of my favorite games, but I'm done playing with it. And I still get crashes every now and then, but I haven't had like an in, you know, at least a couple weeks, which is at least a start.
So Davey, what do you
like? That's not happening.
So Davey, what do you think about this whole idea about like teasing and like the communication and stuff like that?
I just agree with what you guys said. There's been so much teasing. Just get on it. Just announce something and, you know, make people motivated to bracket.
Even if it's just
obviously the plans are there, so
yeah. Even if it's just like, okay, this is our realistic time window for developing these fixes and implementing the stuff that we need to make this game kind of like at least look respectable to the outside community, no matter who's streaming it when. Like that's probably like the bare minimum of what they're worried about right there, right? So like if it was like 3 months down the road, be like, this is our goal, is to have this awesome shit ready in the near future before full release, like that would be awesome. I think that is like at least giving a time window of when they hope to do things is also a tease, but at least you kind of can give some perspective on how long people have to wait. Yeah. So there's no easy answer for the devs, unfortunately.
Right. So in general, I think we both think that it was a good, transparent response from Joe Brammer. It addressed a lot of things. I think he did a good job addressing the open beta early access thing. I think he did a good job addressing the esports thing. So I thought it was a reasonable response. There was... Hey folks, so sorry for the abrupt transition here. We had some issues. As you can see, I had to like move to a different location, but we're grinding out this show. People want it. We know it's been a while, so we're trying to get it done. But the way we left off that first segment that we're transitioning from was talking about state of the game stuff, talking about Joe Brammer's response to Aerox's post on subreddit. And I want to finish off the discussion of the state of the game by talking about some stuff that we actually just recently saw on Reddit and also from Brammer in Twitch chat during I-62, the LAN tournament, which we'll talk about later. But basically the point is that he was saying that updates are going to be a little bit less often. I think July is apparently the next major update. It was supposed to be sometime in June, but it got pushed back. And because they're changing the philosophy and wanting to do like bigger updates rather than a bunch of small updates, except for hot fixes when they're really required. Perfect example is the map fix they did for Liberation because of the collision bug that was going on there to get it back into the competitive map pool. But really wanting to focus on larger, less often updates because obviously March 8th and March 16th are very close together. And he said the reason for this pushback was because they were trying to get all the awesome upgrades to the engine that Epic puts out that they build their game on, that we saw go to Fortnite. So just optimization stuff, bug fixes, things like that. So they want to acquire all that for Battalion. And just in general, they want to make the philosophy of updating the game going forward be like bigger updates, but just less often. So Davy, what are your thoughts on this philosophy?
I'm personally not a fan of like a big update every few months. I'm more a fan of like, consistent content every few weeks or whatever. But the thing is, I don't really know how their team looks like. I know it's a small team, so I guess it's not easy for them to really do it every few weeks. The optimization thing is good. I don't know what happened with the Fortnite with the engine, but more optimization obviously better to have. So it's good that they want to implement that. What else was there?
That was really about it for this part. We're gonna address some of the actual things that are supposed to be in the update later, but.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I wanted to address one of those, but okay.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that, and if just write it down if I don't bring it up, so you can bring it up a little bit later. But I should have it. But Lex, any thoughts on this kind of change of course in the update philosophy?
I think as like a player, kind of like agreeing with Davey. As a player, like I want an update every other week. Like I want everything that is being talked about like consistently being put into the game. It's a little bit selfish, maybe. Like I think definitely from a dev standpoint, one, it's a lot easier to probably not do that and just focus on one big update where you can kind of just roll everything you're working on into one. And it probably looks better from an outside perspective because you're not, you sold X amount of copies of the game, right? And part of the challenge is to get the people that are still interested in playing but aren't right now back into the game when the game's in a better state, right? So like, I mentioned it earlier, I think the last time we were doing this podcast, where it's like the game 6 months from now or even like a year from now is going to look obviously way different than it is today. But those big updates, like, obviously will change more of the way the game plays and looks. So if you're trying to attract people back to the game, to have it be like one sweeping giant change and have everything looking all pretty and new features added and stuff like that, it's a lot more of an incentive than it is like, well, 6 weeks ago we added that into the game, without a whole lot of hype behind it. So I understand it. I think it's probably a smart move on their part, but like for the current player base, we're over here like, please just push some small updates in between, like that's how I feel as a player. But
I feel like you could maybe at least see some like weapon balance tweaks just so for testing purposes. Like let's test some new values on something and maybe do that a little bit more often. But when it comes to like maps being added or like obviously the Wartide changes are going to be huge.
I want Wartide too.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do.
Tomorrow.
But you're right, Lex. Like I think you hit a key point there where I think it's more like you're going to get more publicity doing like a really big update that attracts people as opposed to like slowly improving things. Like one big bang is definitely going to catch more attention and bring more players perhaps. But also in this particular situation, they're trying to bring some engine updates, and that is going to be a longer process. And so it does make sense that their next major update would get pushed back to try to acquire these things that might make the game better and easier to develop going forward. So I get your point. Like we all want the game to be consistently updated, but at the same time, I think if they're doing it once a month or once every couple of months, it's fine to me. And also because you have to think about it this way, like if you're changing stuff too often, then maybe you're not getting enough test time on it to see how it actually works, like in the meta. Like when you're talking about like a gun, for instance, like some things might be obviously broken and like obviously in need of change, but at the same time you do need a standard amount of time to actually really make sure you know how it plays out before you start tinkering with it. So I think that's like another thing to think about when you think about this. So yeah, it's interesting to think about that. And again, we'll get to the actual changes that are supposed to be in the update a little bit later on. But one quick thing to end this state of the game topic we've been talking about is the state of NA, because when we talk to Davy every time, he always says, like, we're fine here in Europe, dog. We're playing games, we're queuing, it's fine, it's great.
All day, every day.
Yeah, but obviously the NA scene has really struggled in that regard. But I know that there's been a major push to try to do something about that by a grassroots effort from North American competitive players, mostly. A lot of the teams have come together, and we started out as a Twitter DM, turned into a Discord channel, and we've all been kind of trying to help promote like this NA revival. And I'll let Lex take over at this point to kind of finish explaining it, but just something we wanted to let the community know about, especially if you're in NA. You need to hear this and help us out.
Basically, like the first month and a half or so that the game was out, on early access launch, and then post March 8th update, there was NA server issues. So like you couldn't queue. There was periods of times where you could queue unranked and queue comp. I think I got like 6 placements in.
I only
during
got 2.
that time frame. And then competitive servers were broken again. So it was like, you're pretty much left with no way to play the game if you're a casual player, without playing through community servers. And it was just like constant, I don't know how to put this properly, but like when I'm streaming the game or I'm like playing with friends that aren't competitive players, like trying to get into a game with them is just, it's next to impossible. So all the competitive teams basically reached out to me, and I had been like kind of vocal about it for a few weeks prior, which is I guess why I got roped into it. But they basically said like, hey Lex, look, like we want to make NA like a region where our player base is growing rather than just staying stagnant. And we made it so unranked and competitive are queuable now. I think last night was the first time that the actual competitive Wartide game mode or whatever it is, like ranked is what people call it, was actually able to be queued. I think there was like 2 or 3 games going on last night in addition to all the unranked games, and that's like unheard of for here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's just like a general kind of like attitude change to kind of readjust the way that NA players are thinking about it, because obviously like we're not going to have a huge player base anytime soon, but if there's still people that are interested in playing the game and want to come out and play the game, last week I think there was maybe like 4 or 5 active competitive teams, and it was like within 2 weeks of all this kind of stuff going down, it was like every other day another team was just either dying or moving on. Like a lot of people that were streaming Battalion in the first place are just full-time Fortnite streamers at this point. So like it was just like a sinking ship for any player that's sitting in NA trying to like get better or get a head start in the game, or even just learn it. If you're just having fun, like trying to get into Battalion, it was difficult. So yeah, I mean the NA revival thing, all the details of it aside, and none of that really matters. It's just the fact that competitive players and the people that are taking it seriously said, you know, we want to make this accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
So you know, that's the big PSA, is that you can now queue unranked, and hopefully in the next week or so, you'll have consistent ranked games going on as well. So that's the awesome news.
I'm really happy to see this, because
Call of Duty used to be like everything in Call of Duty was a community effort back in the day. Even like WSVG was a mainstream tournament in esports with big Counter-Strike tournaments and stuff, and the community got made like a campaign with frag movies and stuff like We Are Call of Duty 2, whatever, and to try to get us into WSVG, and it worked for 2 events. Like the second one got cancelled because WSVG folded, but it worked, and we were like on a big stage for once. That was really cool. And years after, like all the tournaments that there were usually from the community, just people volunteering, getting stuff together. And that was really cool to see. And now you can see it happening again, the community coming together in NA now and making, supporting the game. And that's cool to have.
Yeah. And it's not just necessarily NA either. Like we're trying to collaborate. And I know I talked to you a little bit about it, Davey, just fishing for info. But, you know, just content in general for the game. Like I had mentioned earlier, it's not like tomorrow we're going to wake up with 10,000 players on our doorstep and have like a huge market for the game for, you know, making YouTube content or streaming or anything. It's a tough spot if you're like a small streamer who just really is into Battalion and wants to, you know, grow his content in any way possible, it's probably not going to happen. But on the other hand, it's like you definitely have an opportunity to kind of support each other and grow a scene yourselves. Like you said, it's a community effort, and it's, you know, whether or not people are going to agree with you or disagree with you, I think as a whole, it's just a really healthy thing for the game. So I'm excited about it. I mean, it's just fun being able to play Battalion whenever I want now. Like there used to be like a 2 or 3 hour window where we could get scrims, and that was the only time you'd be able to play. And now you can pretty much just, now you can pretty much just play whenever you want. So people are gonna hate on that, but that's awesome.
There you go. So now we're going to move on to some actual gameplay changes that took place March 8th and March 16th. We've actually now had an ample amount of time to kind of play on these changes. I think it was better to kind of wait and let it sit for a bit and let us actually play on it and have a real opinion instead of like an initial gut reaction on a lot of these changes. And so we're going to start with gameplay changes first and then go into maps a little bit later. And I don't really should we even talk about Wartide, because I feel like all that it is right now is temporary and it's going to get overhauled, and we all know that. So is there really a point in talking about it?
I don't think there's much to say yet.
Yeah, because like right now, obviously, it's temporary infinite cards except for SMG and Sniper. So I think we're just going to kind of leave it alone until we get like real news about Wartide 2 that we can actually talk about publicly. Yeah. So we're going to skip that part. But we do need to talk about some other gameplay changes. And the first one, I'll let Davy take this one because I know he's gonna love this one. He's talking about it a lot the first episode. Them SMGs got buffed a little bit. Them SMGs got buffed a little bit. Maximum bullets to kill at furthest range was actually slightly buffed, but who cares? It's like 10 bullets still, so it's still a lot. But the 2-shot kill range is significantly shorter for the SMG. Now, you guys have now gotten to play with these SMG changes. It's also one, like in a temporary Wartide system, it's one of the cards that is limited as well. And I feel like it's going to be one of the more expensive guns in Wartide 2. So I think that's worth pointing out as well a little bit. But do you feel this was enough of a nerf? I'll start with you, Davy. Or do you think there still needs to be tweaks to the SMG?
Actually, at this point, the meta is more about the STG because it's unlimited and it's really strong. And
that's true.
So do we need to buff the SMG, or do we need to wait for Wartide, making it more viable to use the SMG? Because maybe STG will be more, heavies will be more expensive. So
yeah,
it's hard to say. You know?
It is. I think you're right. Now, when you've gone up against an SMG, though, has it felt different at least? Like when you have gone up against an SMG, or seen like your teammate Tatsuya use it or something?
Yeah, he's been dropping less 30 bombs, that's for sure. He's still doing great, of course, but there's definitely a change there. But it's also because like the netcode, they improved the netcode thing, so you don't really get the peaker's advantage is a lot less right now, which is really big, to be honest, because that was annoying as fuck. But SMG at this point, like Thompson is still pretty strong. Especially compared to the MP40. I don't really use them a lot, but that's what I hear a lot. And I think that they're not equal yet. So I think that there still needs to be some balancing between MP40 and Thompson. But I like what has happened. I like the changes for now. I like them.
Yeah, I think you're right about having to wait for Wartide 2 to really get a feel for the SMG, because you're right, it's not really used right now. A lot of people are going heavy class. Lex, do you want to pitch in here on the SMG talk about this nerf and what you've thought about it?
I know we're going to get into a little bit more about maps and weapon balance and shit like that, but like weapon balance in general, the thing about it is like you said, Davey, is when you're in this current card system where like players don't get punished for playing recklessly and you can pretty much just like take whatever class you want, like it's really tough to talk about like how the game is actually balanced, because there's no point in taking some of these guns sometimes. Like the Thompson, I still see widely used on allied sides, depending on what kind of strategy teams are running. And I still see MP40s in games, but if an opponent's like relying on their SMGs in some way, like Liberation, pushing market, or something along those lines, like trying to take map control, you're probably not going to run an MP40 back just to deny them those cards. And that's like the most eye-opening thing I think about the way it's played right now is like, yes, I'm seeing way less SMGs. Like you used to get lasered by Thompsons in every situation, and you're just like, wow, you're getting melted behind corners. Peeker's advantage was so bad that like they felt like so imbalanced, and certainly I think they were a little OP at some points. But I think they're probably in the best place that they can be right now, considering the way the card system works. So I'm overall pretty happy with it.
Okay, y'all keep talking about Peeker's
The most important
advantage.
thing was like the mid-range, like
Okay.
mid-range battles. SMG was just better to have than heavy, and that was weird. And that doesn't seem to be right now, so that's really good to have. And also, let's not forget, let's not underestimate the fact that they fixed this netcode. Well, fixed.
Yeah,
well,
talk about that more, by the way.
loads.
How has that felt now, like playing scrims and stuff with this new netcode? Has it definitely felt better? Like, has you felt less handicapped holding angles? Like, how has it been for you, Davy?
100% feels a lot better. Like, it was so annoying, you know, to know where the guy was gonna come from, have an off angle on him, but just still lose the battle because of that biggest advantage and the 2 bullet kills at mid range. So that doesn't happen a lot anymore. And then I hear about the guys that went to the lands, to I series. That on LAN it's even better, which makes sense obviously, but I feel like it's pretty good online already. So so I'm excited and I can't wait to use it to test it on LAN as well.
Lex, you had the same sentiment about it from your scrims?
No, absolutely. Like as a scope, I think I experienced Peeker's advantage a little bit different than other people. Like usually the Peeker's advantage was working in my favor, and like I remember kind of like ingraining in myself before the update to netcode was that like I can't really jiggle peek anything, which means like you had to jump peek if you wanted to like grab an angle against somebody. And if you were peeking into someone's pre-fire, trying to jiggle peek or like quick peek into someone's pre-fire, especially like a Thompson at like close or mid-range, like you're gonna get melted in the face if you were doing that before. And you'd like spot them, take a shot, miss, and then peel around a corner and then be dead. And it's just like, what the fuck was that? So the fact that that's gone now and like you can quickly jiggle peek against people and actually counter some of this stuff without being super gimmicky. Like I get like almost triggered at my teammates sometimes when they jump peek corners just instinctively like you would a month ago and just they miss their shot and they get melted and they're like, oh man, like what the hell happened? Well, like you don't have the advantage of just like seeing these guys for 2 seconds before they can return fire, you know? So I think like in general, the netcode is in a fantastic spot. It's a little bit different here in NA because even to unranked, like I ping 80 to 85 or something like that from California, just because they're Chicago servers. But I definitely, it's noticeable when you're on 80 plus ping. Like there are scope battles, like I have a whole montage of just like me shooting on my screen, like moving away and then dying still. But like that is kind of how it should feel to some extent when you're like rocking about 90 ping.
Right.
Like it's not, when that happens to me, I'm just like, okay, understandably, this guy was quicker than me or it was close enough, like he got awarded the kill. It's nowhere near like tilt factor like it would be, I don't know, like CS source days of having 90 ping or something like that. It's definitely in a good spot right now, I think, overall.
And also, like the jumping meta was really big before the last patch, but it's still there. But they're going to be fixing the leaning issue, which is going to be another really big thing. And that's going to make jumping across corners a lot less viable. And I think it will get a lot more attractive for new players to get in as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I had lean buff next on the list of things to talk about, and you've already kind of segued into that. And I know that's something that we also talked about a fair amount in the first episode of this. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the idea of buffing the lean and making it more powerful, and how it's going to impact the game?
Well, buffing, I mean, it doesn't make sense right now. So you can call it buffing. Well, it's buffing, but I just call it getting it to a normal state, just how it's supposed to be. Because it's so weird that you know you're peeking someone and they can see just more of you. It's ridiculous. But I'm really stubborn and I keep slow peeking because I know they're gonna change it, and I want it that way. It's gonna be that way. So, but I'm really happy that they acknowledge that and that they're working on it. That's
What about
been
you, Lex? What do you
confirmed
think
by
about
Hellcat,
leaning?
by the way.
What do you think about leaning, bro?
I think it's going to change the game a lot. I mean, you talk about, I just mentioned that, like, as a scope, like if I'm peeking into somebody that I know is holding an angle or corner, like, I can't lean into it. There's no way you can strafe peek into it and just be safe. Like, you're going to get your head lopped off. And so the only real solution that I have is, like, either I jiggle peek the corner and draw a shot out and then peek, or I jump it entirely and go for the frag. Like, there's only two options there. And yes, now that the netcode's better, like, I see people jiggle peeking successfully all the time, and it's just like, that's a whole different skill set that wasn't there prior to the netcode fixes. Like, you would get punished for that every time. Which, like, if you're coming from any FPS, especially one with movement speed as quick as this, like, your instinct should be like, I'm going to draw out this guy's shot, like, show him a shoulder and then fall back. Like, I see people doing that aren't even, like, great players or playing at a competitive level. And now that that's going to be, like, even more viable to the point where, like, you can lean peek into someone and they can get punished while they're jumping around corners, like, it's definitely going to add another additional move to the chess match that is Battalion when you talk about, like, outplay factor and things like that. I think overall it's going to be a good thing because you're going to be able to punish a lot of the more gimmicky stuff like jump peaks, proning, whatever else. It's also going to make the game a lot harder. Yeah. But it works both ways, right? Like, if new players can also learn how to use it, you know, that's the only thing that really matters is what Davy said. It's like, it should work how it's supposed to, right? Like,
I mean, outside of sprint, this is supposed to be the thing that separates this, like, movement wise from, like, a Counter-Strike is lean. Like, so that's definitely gonna, which is gonna be hard for me coming from CS because I jiggle peek all the time. That was so natural to me immediately. And like you said, with the new netcode updates, I get away with it now. Before I couldn't, and I'm so used to doing it. I feel like a lean buff would force me to break that habit, like, and get out of jiggle peeking and get into, like, using the lean mechanic properly and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it'll definitely be an interesting addition. Another interesting addition that could be on the horizon that I think we all will be happy about if indeed it does go through the way that we hope. So apparently the bar is going to get buffed again. So that is apparently the word on the street that I've been hearing. We already had the iron sights get slightly tweaked. And, like, apparently didn't they buff something about damage or something when they did the STG one-shot buff? I thought they also did a slight buff to the bar, but it didn't feel substantial enough. And people are still complaining about the bar. Getting barred is almost like the new meme, like getting CS:GO'd was in CS. So what are your guys' thoughts about the bar finally getting some love? And what do you think it needs? Like, what type of buff should we be looking at here?
Well, I think it should just be the counterpart of the STG, right? So I don't know out of my head how many bullets it takes now with the bar, but a lot.
20? Oh, that's 20 in it. Okay, sorry. Might as well be 20 shots to kill somebody with that damn thing too. So I wasn't off. But anyway,
I actually suggested on Twitter once, because there's a lot of people that don't like the time to kill right now, right? It's really fast. I'm not the biggest fan of it either. So I just suggested, instead of buffing the bar, just make the bar the central point and
scale other guns
nerf
back.
The rest, yeah. So the bar is in a good place and relatively well compared to the other guns, and so the time to kill is a bit less. So that could be interesting, but I don't.
I wonder about that though, because if you increase time to kill, do you have to consider the fact that right now you can pretty easily escape and, like, regen, but if it took even longer to kill you, then it's easier to get away and regen. So I kind of wonder about that a little bit. If you have to start tinkering with, like, regen rate and stuff as well, if you start tinkering with time to kill.
Yeah, regen might need a bit of change, but I do think if you have higher time to kill, then people will focus more on aiming for the head, for instance.
Yeah, that's true.
You'll get, like, way cooler battles, I'd say.
What do you think about all that?
Like, I completely agree. I have suggested a few times now, like, if we just lowered time to kill on everything, it would definitely play like a much different game. The thing about it is, and this is kind of, like, obvious, but when you have scopes and bolts so prevalent in this kind of a title, like, you can't really mess with time to kill a whole lot there.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's ways that you can get around that, right? Like, you can nerf bolts movement speed, the fire rate, ADS speed, stuff like that. And unfortunately,
Expensive. Make them expensive.
You can make them expensive, and there are in the Wartide too, a lot of that stuff like can actually be implemented, and you can definitely assess better on like how the guns are actually used, how often they're used, how successful players are from the casual levels using them, things like that. But the tricky part about stuff like that is if you start messing with regen rates, player health, damage, time to kill, like all those factors that kind of go into it, everything kind of has to be adjusted. And you know, I'm not against, you know, having a total revamp of the way kind of the game plays as far as the actual fragability of players goes. It's just like I think a lot of the enjoyment that I get out of the game is that like the outplay factors are pretty rewarding right now. And like once you get like the new player models and some of the like the headshot angles and player helmets are more easily seen and shot. I think that in and of itself is going to kind of like, you know, make headshots more viable. And I think headshots are honestly not even in a bad place right now.
No.
But
here's the thing: it's much easier to buff the bar than to change everything else, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's
also
what I'm
to me.
at.
Time to kill doesn't feel that much faster in Battalion than CS to me. When you think about, when you really think about it, like because AKs are one taps, ops are one shot kills, like. M4 takes a few more body shots, but typically you're killing people in 3 to 4 bullets in CS all the time. So it doesn't feel
no
like
regen
so
either.
just no regen, right? So that's the difference. But so when you think of it that way, it's not really that much crazier than other FPS titles that are popular right now.
But in CS, people do go for headshots a lot more, though, right?
Yeah, of course.
That's the first thing you go for. That's not happening in Battalion. You can just spray. Like
well, it's also easier because of movement speed to line up headshots, I think, like in general, which is why you go for body shots more in Battalion.
But I'm not convinced that the headshots are in a good place right now. I think they're like weird compared to like CoD 2. Just, you know, that's where I come from. So for me, I compare to that.
Well, related to that, by the way, is this idea about changing their head sizes for player models.
They're coming. There will be new models. Brammer already tweeted about it. So I'm excited to see that. He referred to the new heads as pitbull heads.
Big Brammer heads.
Big Brammer heads.
So what do you think about that, Lex? Like, is that a buff? Or is that a nerf to a head if you make it bigger?
I mean,
I guess it's a brain nerf.
It is needed. I had this kind of debate with the team 2 days ago, and because they were all discussing it, and they were like, honestly, like I get headshots all the time with the 44. Like I can accurately go for multi-frags, and sometimes I don't get them, but like if I aim for the head, like sometimes I get rewarded with it, and I feel like it's rewarding. And I'm like, okay, like I understand that. If you're confident that you can aim for heads, I understand that argument. And the time to kill is already fast, and you're already able to kill people super quick, even if it's a random headshot, you know, like even if you're not necessarily searching for one, sometimes you get awarded it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that like my issue with the way the player models are right now is that all around the map on just about any single one, you're going to find headshot angles. You're going to find weird spots that like, because in Battalion and most FPSs, like the bullets actually come out of the player model's head, the face of the player. So like you can only be peeking with the top half of your helmet, and you can be spraying at people fully visible. Even as a scope, man, like I have the most accurate weapon in the game. And if people are like bobbing and weaving with lean keys at a headshot angle, like there's zero chance, no matter how skilled I am, that I'm like going to consistently be able to punish this guy. And so like, instead of removing headshot angles all around the game, like I don't dislike the idea of buffing the headshot, not necessarily the head hitbox, but the player models in general. One, because they'll be more visible, and two, because you can punish those more.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the encapsulations of my thoughts on it.
Okay.
But I think overall, just like having brighter, more visible player models that like stand out more on the map, and like aren't so graphic settings reliant. Like I have a very, very hard time since the lighting updates, seeing player models in general. And I think that's a universal thing. But I'm also freaking colorblind. So like I have the strangest lighting and color tweaks on my computer just to be able to make out a German model standing next to anything. Like, and same goes for allies on any kind of light part of the map. Like, it's just, that's where it is. And they're very aware of all of it. Cause I remember I was very kind of whiny about it when the lighting changes first dropped. And I know a lot of people were, but they know what's going on. They have the player models working. And once we're able to turn off a lot of that graphic settings and whatever else, it'll be hopefully in a much better spot to where you don't need to go hardcore into tweaking your game.
So shotgun changes has also been a big talk of the town, and supposedly supposed to be something coming to the major update we were supposed to have in July. What are your thoughts on what the shotgun needs here? Because there's been a lot of different discussion about like animation, shot speed. So what are your thoughts here?
That's a thing that I would like to see in a hotfix, not wait till July for the shotgun, because
please.
Well, because like okay, so the shotgun is made to be a close range weapon, right? So a big spread, so you can hit easier short range and have a harder time hitting long range, and now you can truly hit some really long range shots with the shotgun, and the fire rate is pretty fucking fast. But that's not even the most annoying part. The most annoying part is the warping. People warp when they shoot with the thing. That seems to me something you need to address in a hotfix and not wait 4 months.
Also, what's this talk about silent shots?
Oh yeah, my team told me about it.
Is it the shotgun or is it across the board?
It's across the board.
It's across the board, yeah. There's a technique which I don't want to be putting out there.
Okay.
So
that's the hot fix as well. It needs to come, basically, is what we're saying.
Yeah. People are gonna start abusing it. Well, there's a technique which makes you have silent shots, so people don't hear you shooting. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
The devs are aware of both the warping and the silent shots. I know Howard posted on Reddit like 2 days ago that the warping has already been fixed on their end, which is even more reason why I think that should be hotfixed in, like you said, Davey.
Oh yeah, indeed. Whoa, put that in the hotfix, please.
Yeah. I agree with that.
God.
Do you have anything to add to the shotgun? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, dude, like the thing about it is I don't even have an issue with the range or anything about the shotgun. Like, there's going to be complaints that it's too far of a range and it's too inconsistent up close. Like, everyone's going to have in COD 2, that thing was like you had to be a shotgun savant to be consistently good with it. Like, there was literally dedicated shotgunners in the game for a reason. Like, there's only a few people.
None of them wanted to be, but
yeah, nobody wanted to be a shotgunner. But if you were good with it, like, you got given the shotgun. Like,
Rob was he was like,
he's a shotgunner.
Yeah, he played shotgun on Pandemic just to be able to be in a team, and the rest of Pandemic they knew that he was probably one of the best riflers in NA. But nobody wanted to play shotgun, so he was forced to do it. So he always says when if he could have played rifle in the WSVG finals, they would have won. It wasn't that close.
No, but I mean, like I was saying, the shotgun is like the thing that just drives me nuts is the amount of times that my team is in like a 5-on-2 situation. And the last thing we have to do, there's 30 seconds left. We got to plant the bomb like on Coastal, a bomb site. That's all that we need to do is plant the damn bomb. And there's a shotgunner sitting on the stairs in A somewhere that just like has a fully automatic 5-round shotgun that just like, how do you trade on that? Like, you have to come up like 15 feet of stairs and like swing on this guy with a shotgun, and you have a doorway. Oh yeah, don't even bring that up. I don't even know why that was allowed at I-62, but that's another conversation. Like,
yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
The thing is like, I don't have any issue with the shotgun because I don't use it and it's whatever to me. But like, the idea that you just simply cannot trade on a shotgunner because his fire rate is so fast is just so frustrating in game. So I would love to just see like pump, reload, fire again, just like a bolt speed, even just like have it so it actually feels like a skill weapon and it's not like playing Instagib at 3-foot range with a freaking shotgun.
There you go. I think we've hammered that away. I think that I can't really add anything to that. I think that that's basically sealed, locked up. One thing that's
Pray
also
for a hotfix.
yeah. So another thing that's coming up apparently in the update. And this is something that I talked about in the video that I did when I was talking about Derailed, which we'll talk about that later. By the way, Mr. Lex Tunnel Boy. Anyway, there was talk about changing bomb site wall banging through like the materials that you plant behind, because I feel that's a real problem right now. How easy it is to line up spams on bomb planters, like particularly on Derailed on the church site from like that spawn building you can be inside of through the window. It's like ridiculous. Like even if you use utility to cover yourself when you plant, you can just get lit the fuck up like trying to plant the bomb. And so this is something else that's being talked about, whether it be just making it less spammable or replacing the model altogether and making it something like all metal that isn't spammable. There's definitely been a lot of talk about potential like wall banging changes to bomb plant zones. What have your thoughts been about this?
Oh, I agree. It needs to get changed. It's easy to just like, well, Derailed B-bomb, let's say. It's easy to find a spot as access behind the double doors,
Mm-hmm.
you know, access sided, and just have an angle. Well, it's barely even an angle on the B-bomb, and wait for them to plant, and you just start spraying, and you'll get killed. It's really bad. Like actually, like pushing B. What is often a more viable tactic is now just to keep on pushing, just towards the double doors and the ticket booth and stuff like that, because you know you're gonna get wall banged. Either you're gonna get wall banged or you're gonna get naded.
Yeah.
So it's really too easy right now in these bomb spots.
Lex, consensus on this or?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I think it's super annoying when you're like getting spammed through there, and I don't hate it. I think part of it could be resolved if they were like adamant about keeping the bomb sites the way they are. Like just say that was someone's stance. I think like a short term or like an easy kind of fix for it would just be like reduce the amount of damage through those boxes. Because even as a scope, man, like I know that it's going to usually take 2, but if I hit that guy in the face, it's a 1-shot through the bomb, and if it's 2, it's like you don't really miss a whole lot. And if I have an STG or something like that, like the guy's dead if you're able to get into a spot where you can spam him. Like there's no fear for it. There's no real way to like counter it if you're planning, especially if you don't have a smoke up in front of you. Like you either plant behind that box or you're dead, and you're probably dead either way. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that like I think the short-term solution would be like changing the damage through the boxes. But a different one would just be like changing the way the bomb sites are entirely. People have suggested kind of like COD2, like having 88s that you plant bombs on, half tracks, whatever else, like pieces of armor, tanks. Like there's definitely different ways that you can have a bomb site on a map. It's definitely going to be a little bit more confusing, I think, like maybe for new players if every single map has a different kind of bomb site. But in general, I think there's a lot of different options that can be used to resolve it, but it doesn't feel like it's super intuitive, being able to spam through everything and good for gaming or good for the competition.
Right.
I don't know. I'm totally open to changing how that's done entirely. I don't have an easy solution for it.
Here's a more controversial topic, by the way, that's relating to bomb site zones, is the fact that as of now, you can like jump while you're defusing and like make noise and stuff. I feel like I've heard this argument get spun both ways. Some people think it's a nice tool to have when you're clutching that adds to the clutch and adds to the mind games of a clutch. I've heard some people talk about how it's like obviously a little bit overpowered to be able to do that. And I feel like this is actually like a pretty polarizing topic in the community when I've seen people talk about it like on Reddit and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of curious. This wasn't mentioned, by the way, as something that might get changed. As it stands, you can jump and defuse, and there's been no discussion from the devs that I've seen on changing this. But I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on it, playing against it, or using it maybe.
I think it's intended, actually.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
I'm not sure which side I swing towards, to be honest. I think it looks weird. I like that you can do the mind games with it, but I think it's just weird if you're a new player and you see that happening and you're like, what, that doesn't make sense. Or that like. My
problem is this. This is why I don't like it. For one, you can already tap, which is already a mind game in itself on whether you're sticking or not. The defuse, that is, right? So you already get that mind game. the game is already so Axis geared as it stands as far as like weapon power, map balance. A lot of the time it feels like Axis already has all these advantages. So it's like if Axis also get that advantage in a like clutch defusal moment, like fuck man, like what do allies have at this point? Like that's what I feel like. I feel like everything, if you add it all up, if you stack up all of everything in the game, it does just feel like the scale is like really tipped a little bit too much, and this is just like one domino in that stack, so to speak. And so that's kind of my reason why I feel like maybe we need to think about it a little bit. But Lex, what are your thoughts here?
I'm also kind of indifferent. The amount of times that I actually have seen it successful or work or whatever else, like it's frequent enough. Like it's maybe once every couple of games you see somebody actually like attempt to use it or successfully use it is even more rare. But I think it's actually like it's not broken or bad enough or annoying enough to where like I think it needs some kind of a change. I definitely think it adds to the outplay factor of clutching. Like this whole game, like the entire game is just like the ultimate clutch FPS. Like that's what the Call of Duty games are, is like you get put in a clutch situation and the round is never over until it's over. Like CS, if you're in a 1v4, you're saving that fucking gun. In Battalion, like 9 times out of 10, especially if you're not getting the way the current card system is, like if you're not getting punished for going for clutches, like that's really exciting. Like even during,
and that was an original design that they wanted, by the way. Like they were actually against the idea of like saving guns and stuff like that, and they kind of at the end allowed you to save guns in the original Wartide. So their philosophy is very much like trying to promote going for the clutch.
That's what I'm saying, is that like especially once people are going to be more inclined to save, like having these clutch tools available might be something. Like clutching might just be too hard, and that might take away, you know. And I'm not just talking about the jumping here when you're defusing. I'm talking about like the way the bomb sites are changed, and if it's much easier for the allies to plant the bomb, then that means retaking and defusing that bomb becomes more difficult, right? So there's definitely a debate to be had there. And again, I don't know where I stand on it as far as the diffusing bug goes, but at this point in time, I don't think it's an issue. And I see it get posted on Reddit a lot, and people are like, "Oh man, this is so broken. Why is it in the game?" And it's like, that guy just lost a competitive match in ranked because he didn't. Like, I'm sorry,
he took a
like,
break from calling people out for cheating on stream to talk about this jumping with the bomb defusal. So, you know, at least they're changing it up.
It happened to us actually in like one of the very first. It wasn't a Blitzkrieg. I think it was like a fast frag. We ended up winning the tournament, but it was like it happened to us in like a semifinals match or something, and it was like a 1v3 situation, and no one checked the bomb, and we're like, one of my teammates was, "Oh well, why is this in the game? This is so fucking stupid." And I'm just like, we played that fucking terribly. Like we deserve to lose that round. Like I don't. Like yes, he made a genius play by jumping on that bomb, and it's a little cheesy, but like that clutch would have never happened either way without it being in there. So I don't take issue with it. Let's just put it that way.
All right,
I agree on promote clutches and not go like in Counter-Strike. I just hate people just even 1v3s just or 1v2s not even trying because saving the op and whatever. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, there are pro players that have made their careers by buffing NHL TV rating, by just like saving every single round. And it's just like, you know what? I get it. It's like damage to the economy. And in a CS competitive player's mind, it's like so smart. Like you're destroying their economy and you're keeping your
sense.
gun.
Yeah, it makes sense. But
for a spectator-friendly environment, like it's not fun to watch. So I mean, I totally get both, and that's kind of why I'm like, if anything that'll get players to go for clutches more, I think is a good thing in general.
Yeah, which takes me to my next point, which is that the bomb fuse has been increased, so it gives more time for rotations and retaking. It's now 50 seconds. I think it used to be 45, so I think it was a 5-second increase. Again, though, I come back to this point I brought up earlier. How many times are we going to give Axis advantages in this game? Like, this is another example of, like, let's give Axis more time to rotate and retake by increasing the bomb fuse. It's like, come on, man. Like, as it stands, it's already so hard to plant because you can get spammed, and, like, you know, Axis guns are in general a little bit better, like the STG in particular. And so it's just like, dude, like, how many advantages are we really going to give over to Axis at this point? And so that's what bothers me about it. But at the same time, yeah, it increases that incentive to go for the clutch. It makes it a little bit easier for Axis to go for retakes. They have more time to develop their retake. And so I see both sides of it, but again, I just feel like, man, okay, this is cool, but I feel like at some point we gotta tip the scales a little bit somewhere in this game. And I feel like I don't even realize it. I didn't even think this was much of a problem. I know Lex brought it up as kind of a problem in the first episode, wishing he had more time to rotate players for retakes, but it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, I keep coming back to the fact that, like, every change winds up helping Axis more and more. So what are your thoughts on this?
No matter what way you cut it, until Wartime 2 comes out, and this is just a pure assumption, I don't know anything that you guys don't, but like the idea that allied weapons are going to be cheaper and Axis weapons are going to be more expensive, like that philosophy
that could help,
makes a lot of sense. I mean, think about CS. Like, yes, every map is very CT sided, and Valve has done everything they can to make it more balanced everywhere. But like the core idea of Counter-Strike is that, like, terrorist weapons are cheaper, their utility's cheaper, everything's cheaper for the harder side, and it's more difficult and you get punished more if you're on CT. So
you're right, that could definitely help.
I really do like the longer timer for rotations, especially on maps like Derailed and Coastal, where like the rotation times are long. Like, if you don't get in there and sprint your way across the map immediately and find a frag, like, you weren't able to go get it. And it's not like 5 seconds is just gonna change everything. But it's just like a little bit more breathing room to make the game more exciting. Like, even just watching I-62 this weekend, like watching some of the clutches that came out and some of the retakes that came out from both sides, Allied and Axis, were just like phenomenal stuff. And I want to just emphasize that, like, regardless of how they balance the game towards Axis or Allies, if it's fun to watch and it's something that spectators are easily able to follow, regardless of what the nuances of the game type are, like, that is a plus for Bulkhead and Battalion. Like, the clutch ability, and again, even if it means like 9-3 halves being like a best case scenario for Allies, like, that's not too different from what it was in CoD 2. Like, there was definitely maps where it would be one-sided one way or the other, and I would love to see it a better mix of like having some Allied sided maps up there.
Yeah. That's the other way you can solve the problem, is by balancing the map pool. So
for sure. And I think there's definitely just general basic map changes, and I know you brought up the Derailed tunnel earlier, so I guess we're gonna have to talk about that.
We'll talk about it a little bit. Yeah, we're close.
Like,
we're close.
When you are moving towards those map changes to kind of like benefit both sides or buff the allies in some way and make it a little bit easier, I think a lot of those things, those general worries that you're having, Dust, hopefully will be less apparent to somebody who's new to the game. Like, you know, that 2 or 3 rounds that you can hope for on allies turns into 4 or 5, and that in and of itself can just make the game more enjoyable, having something to fight for every round.
What do you think about this, Davy? The bomb timer longer?
Yeah, I agree on pretty much everything Lex said, and even on top of that, the rotations on some maps are long, and like Coastal B side, so many angles to check, dude. I mean, please give me some time to check them. You know.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm actually a fan of the extra.
I think I was on the fence about it, and you're starting to sway me a little bit here. So that's why these conversations are good. So I think I'm gonna leave gameplay changes alone after that. I think there might have been a couple of more, like with jumping and stuff like that. But I kind of want to stay away from speculating too much more. I think it's better if we just make a video after they actually make changes and we react to them, as opposed to like trying to guess what's going to happen next. But these other changes seem pretty clear what the direction was going to be, so that's why we brought them up. And now I want to move into maps now, and this will be kind of our final gameplay thing before we talk a little bit about the iSeries event. So first off, can we just get fast with the first topic really quick so we can, you know, have more time allotted for the other topics? Can we just agree across the board the new mini-maps are great and just leave it at that and, like, move on? All right. So thought that was going to be an easy one. A fantastic job with the new mini-maps. I think they're fantastic. I just hope that we can get some damn site letters on those mini-maps for spectating purposes, that would be so wonderful. So that's the only thing I have to say about it. Speaking of which, spectating has gotten a lot better in this game. Finally, all the colors are synced up for X-ray, mini-map, giant map overview as far as blue and red for respective teams, which I think is great. They're finally getting that going. There's a lot more spectating changes to come, by the way. I can't really talk about it, but I've been in conversations with Howard privately. We have a Google Doc we're working on together about spectating stuff because that's like the one area I really can help in, I feel like, coming from a commentator's perspective, is like, this is what I need, or what a commentator would want to have. And so we're really working on that. But now let's color and lighting. So this is colors and lighting have been getting tweaked left and right. I think for some maps it's been welcomed, like Manor V2. I think that I really like the color change on that map. But for some people, like you said, it's an affected visibility. And we saw them tweak it already. Like Liberation got tweaked pretty quickly to show the clouds better and stuff like that. Like it didn't last very long with the original color tweak, and then already got adjusted again. And maybe more adjustments are to come. What are your thoughts right now on like just color and lighting across the board for these maps?
That wasn't really a big issue for me. Okay. The change, well, the initial change to Liberation felt really weird, really orange to me. Like I said it in some Twitch chat that like an Instagram filter.
yeah, I remember that.
And I saw that got picked up.
It did get tweaked
they changed it pretty quickly. Yeah, so that was cool. I think Brammer actually does those.
Yep.
So they got to that pretty fast, so that's cool.
I liked it personally. I was sick of the dog, everything being doll and gray. Like, I know it's a World War II game, and doll and gray is supposed to be kind of like a theme. And maybe you have some maps like that. Like, I think Derailed is still kind of that way. But like a map like Manor V2 was nice to see it brighten up a little bit. Coastal was already a nice, bright, colorful map, and so they didn't really need any tweaks, in my opinion. But in general, I like the idea of having like different color schemes for different maps to set them apart a little bit more. What are your thoughts, Lex? I know obviously you have like a special situation you're dealing with colors in the game, but just in general, what have you thought about this direction?
I'm honestly kind of surprised that you guys said that. I think a lot of the sentiment towards the lighting changes, like you said, Davy, is just like when the Liberation changes came out, a lot of people really didn't like how the map looked, just in general, like Instagram filter. But no, I felt like I had a really unpopular opinion after it dropped, even though I was having such a hard time personally seeing anything, and I heard a lot of people having similar complaints. The game looks really pretty now, with the lighting and the bloom and whatever else. I just wish I could personally turn it off. I'm playing with SM4 right now, which, like, I don't know if
I've heard lighting. I've heard bloom and fog changes may be coming as well in the next major update, but we didn't really bring it up. But
yeah, they tweeted it out basically that like the SM4 command, which you put in launch options, it disables a lot of that stuff and it makes the game a lot darker. It makes it look terrible, actually. So like, you like the game looking pretty, don't touch that. But it made it so I can differentiate player models against the environment a lot easier, especially with the lighting on them. And I like, that was my thing. I'm just like, I wish I personally as a player had an option to turn a lot of this stuff off so that, like, you know, from a content creator's perspective, like, yeah, I want my game looking pretty so my viewers or my YouTube videos look good. But on the other side of it is if I'm trying to like just compete in this game, like a lot of that stuff just becomes annoying. And I believe they tweeted it out that like they're going to allow those things to be in the game, at least for now, until they have those graphics options down and enabled inside the game itself so that, you know, I can customize it.
Yeah,
that's
fair enough.
But in general, I think the lighting and the colors on the maps, just a more colorful game, a brighter game, a more vibrant game is an awesome direction to take it. I would love to see the game like, yes, we're playing a World War II game and a lot of things are dull gray and green, but just having different color palettes for maps. Give me a North Africa map like tomorrow. Let's go. Like this stuff. Like
snow map.
You got to imagine that's on the way.
Snow map.
You got to imagine these things are on the way.
Without PPSH.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. Like just different color palettes and having a much more vibrant game in general is
also different countries are on the way, by the way.
Awesome.
I think that's been kind of overlooked, but I know that for sure. This is actually public information.
Next, right?
Yeah, Russia, Italy, I think has been talked about as well. This is already public information, by the way. Like, people, I think, missed this in an interview I did with Brammer a long time ago, that these things are on the way, but obviously other things are taking precedence on the core game itself. So, yeah, I think that we've kind of hit that up. Did you want to add anything to that, Davey, about colors?
Yeah, a lot. Like, I know, indeed, it's World War II, and death and destruction and all that. But I also want to see the maps being positive, being fun to play. I remember, like, I used to want to play Dust 2 instead of Cobblestone because it was more positive, more like the North African thing, like in CoD 2, like Touché and Matmata were like more fun for me to play because it had a more positive vibe to it, I guess.
Yeah, warmer colors.
I think they're going in the right direction, and I think when the game gets more competitive and they would include like logos of teams in the maps and stuff, then it might look even cooler or whatever, or more fun to play, I guess. But I'd like to see more positiveness.
There you go.
In a World War II game, yes.
So let's actually talk about maps now. We'll start with the one that's the least amount of changes to it first, which was Liberation, because really the only thing that got changed besides colors was like they opened up that room inside the B-bomb site, and that's really the only physical change. Oh, and that window, I guess they opened up or whatever. So
yeah,
these were
closed it.
Or closed it. Yeah, sorry. So with that in mind, were they drastic enough to really affect the gameplay in your opinion, or were they just kind of minor? I feel like the room definitely changed up positioning a little bit for Axis members to get more vision on middle and like defend B from a covered area, but you can obviously nade it out because the roof's open. So what have you thought about this change to Liberation? I think the room's the biggest change.
Yeah, I think that's a bit more variety on the B-bomb side. But like what I want to see on Liberation, I think it's a really good map, but just the alleyways are really tight, and I'd like to see it be more broad. That would be like a big change for me, important change. This like the added dark, what's it called, building. That's cool, but I never play B, so I'm not really in there. But it resembles Burgundy a lot more now, though, from CoD 2, which is always good. Or CoD 2, hey?
So Lex, what do you think about this Liberation change with B?
When they had the window open on the B site side, it didn't matter to me which one they closed off, but like people were already finding like ways to play the A bomb site and mid, and also like be able to kill people on B through those windows, like just weird angles, like proning on top of the broken wall in front of sniper. You could literally see into long A or long B. Sorry, like there was just some whack things going on when they had opened up that room, and they ended up closing off the bomb site side window. I'm not sure whether or not that's the best one they could have closed off, but I like it in general. I think like having that in the B bomb site like adds a lot of variety for the defenders, and also holding post plants and retaking. Like it definitely just made it a little bit more creative in the ways that you're finding frags on B. I like it a lot, I think. But Liberation, the one thing that you said about the tight alleyways, I agree. But the thing that kind of irks me about the other maps that have big, broad, open alleyways and stuff like that, like Coastal, don't even get me started, is the way the smoke grenades work in this game right now, that there's just spots that you physically cannot
I forgot about this. I wanted to bring up smokes and gameplay changes.
So like the answer to me is like when you have those kind of like funnel of death areas on maps, like B in general on Lib is just a great example. Like you have the Ivy Arch, and then you have Long B to kind of come into the bomb site, and then the Yellow House. And like all three of those are exposed from multiple different angles. Like a lot of defenders can just, light it up at any given point. You're not going to have a great angle on them. But on the flip side of that is you can actually smoke things off really creatively on Lib. So like it's like the one map where I feel like I can get really creative with strats. And like we don't practice them every day when we're scrimming teams, but just even a few little gimmicky ones really kind of can change the way those bomb sites feel. So at I-62, I saw a couple European teams kind of doing that at B and at mid and stuff like that. But like I still don't think teams have really kind of realized the power of at least in the current card system, when like you're gonna have several Garands on the allied side and running carbines with dual utility. Like you have a lot of different options with how you can approach taking a bomb site.
Yeah.
But with the way the smoke grenades are right now, like
trash can, dumpster fire smoke grenades.
No, I mean it's just like you can't physically smoke off some spots from being able to be seen from the obvious angles, and that's kind of like what the frustration for me is as a tactician is just like, how can I get my team into this place safely?
Yep.
Without getting murdered.
Man,
from
I had some
angles.
sick smoke grenades for Matter V2 that I found, and then later I went and looked at them and was like, wait a second, it only works like 40% of the time that the smoke's up, because the other like 60% of the time it's like swaying in such a way that you can see around the side of it. And it's just like, F, man. Like, apparently the smoke isn't that good. They just need to be consistent. Like, they need to just bloom and stay in position and not like sway around and work a little bit at a time and cover, but then some of the time you're exposed. Like, it needs to be a consistent thing. And they know their smokes are dumpster fires, by the way. Like, I've already heard that they realize their smokes blow and that they want to get better smokes. So we'll definitely just have to keep our eyes posted for that.
Yeah, I have like random gripes about the smoke grenades. Like, I understand that they're not in a finished state and that they're not client side anymore or whatever. And certainly the smoke positions are more consistent than they were in alpha and whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
But like the smokes still take weird bounces. I don't know why they bounce at all. Like they should just bloom as soon as they land for consistency's sake. But
yeah,
that's a different topic. Like there's just little nuances about it that drive me nuts. Like I'll find a perfect smoke for a spot and it'll hit a piece of rubble and bounce a half inch the other way, and suddenly there's a 4-foot gap on the other side. Like there's just, if it was a consistently bad smoke, it'd be like something that I wouldn't complain about nearly as much.
Yeah. I got you.
But I will say that like I don't think teams have really, even the best teams that I've seen play this game so far, have really embraced the strategy wise. There hasn't been enough time in the game. Like this game's only been out for less than 2 months. So
literally Avenue, who made the finals of the event, you got their boy Mark on interview saying, yeah, we're just running around and shooting people. We have no strats. Yeah. We have nothing. Like I think apparently Aerox was like feeding them information on like tendencies he saw in VODs from like opponents they were playing. He would like give them like counters, but like other than that, yeah, they were just like running around shooting people apparently, which is fair enough. Let's talk about the strategy thing. But I want to move on to the next map. Derailed, the tunnel, the Lex Hero Dust Tunnel. We got movie posters in that bitch. Yeah. What do you think about it? You don't like it anymore?
No, I love the tunnel. I think it absolutely made Derailed. I don't feel like I want to off myself as soon as I get into a Derailed allied side on ranked game. It's just like the nade spam is still there. It's still like super like sketch going into courtyard and stuff like that. You have to be wary of things, but as a scope man, dude, like I can take so many more battles at mid and be smart about the way my path where I'm going. Like broken house pushes from short B aren't nearly as strong because you can hold them from court. I think in general it's a lot better, but Derailed's an interesting one. Like I don't know any more obvious fixes. It's definitely something that's going to have to be debated within the community of like how we want Derailed to be and like what the devs vision for it is. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Davey.
Yeah, Davey, what do you think about the tunnel being added? How has it changed gameplay for you on Derailed, and just your thoughts about that?
Doesn't feel like a huge change. I'm more of I'd like to see the bomb sides be a lot more simpler actually on Derailed. That's my issue with Derailed. There's so much going on those sides. I think make those a bit more simple, a lot less angles to cover. That would make the sites more interesting, I'd say. But overall, I never really liked Derailed, and I still don't really do.
Do you think the tunnel helped at all with mid spam though, Davey? Like, do you feel like
it helped, but people are still rushing B, as I've noticed.
Yeah, it's still really hard to deny like allies getting quick sentiment control. Like you pretty much still can't do much about that unless you risk the nade push. But like Lex was saying, at least it gives you more opportunities to like hold broken house push or like take maybe more battles at middle you couldn't really take before. So it's good to hear that there's been some alleviating of stress on the map, but yeah, maybe it's still something that needs to be looked at. But I really just wanted to focus on the change that was made for this episode. We'll have plenty of time to talk about Derailed in the future, but I was just curious what you thought about the tunnel that got added. Because now you get to talk about Manor V2, which got drastically changed, and this is in the March 8th update. So just to kind of recap it really quick, they completely changed Long A. They closed off the plain street. Now that just connects you to middle. B is also a lot more wide open on Long B. Like before you had to kind of just go through a double door to get into the site. Now it's a lot more wide open. They move like the fountain over. So a lot of changes on top of the color scheme, making it, I think, a little bit better looking. But also, like, let's be real, everyone hated Manor V2 whenever, like, you know, early access first came out. It was the ugly duckling. Barely ever saw it played in online tournaments. If it could be avoided, it would be, unless it's like a predetermined map for the round and you didn't have a choice but to play it. Has these changes to Manor V2 made it more enjoyable, in your eyes, more competitive, and just like better in the map pool?
I like it a lot more. I really do enjoy it now, and it's like feels like completely different map to me. It has like a good like 3 ways to attack as allies, and well, yeah, I'm just a fan of it now. Actually, Fantasy did a good job there, and I spoke to him about it, and they're still working on it. Actually, they're still gonna make it better or whatever. I'm not really I'm good with like maps and whatever. So, but I could just say that I really like how it is now, especially compared to the shit show it was first.
What do you think about it, Lex?
Yeah, I think Manor V2 is like most people's favorite map right now,
Okay.
or at least one of their favorites, and that's like a universal feeling that I just, you know, even when you're going to unranked game, people are like, "Oh, well, Manor V2 is so awesome now. Like this map used to suck." It's like, yeah, we haven't played the game in a month and a half. This has been like a great change, I feel like, for the game is these map fixes. And Manor V2, yeah, like you said, I was one of the few people that didn't totally hate it before, but like could definitely just acknowledge the fact that there was some crazy stuff going on the map that didn't need to be there.
Right.
But it feels way more open. In fact, like, yes, it's still hard for the allies. It's still definitely not like an allied-sided map by any means, but certainly there's more opportunities to take map control and pressure the Axis, like draw rotations places, find picks onto the Axis players. So I like it a lot. And the only issue that I really had with it, I don't think we talked, it was out for the last podcast we did, so it was probably a couple weeks after that. The original Manor House V2 that came out, like my big issue was the B bomb site, where like there was a set of stairs and a stone wall, basically. It was like a handrail or something like that, where like you couldn't spam through it, you couldn't really see anybody behind it, and you could head glitch it all day. So I'm really glad that that's been adjusted, but there's still different nuances around the map that I think, that if they're still working on them, the map can be even better. So
see, the only issues I had with the map, because I think overall it's been an improvement, but I like when I was making a video about, like, I just did some brainstorming videos in this YouTube channel you guys can go check out, but what I didn't like about it was I felt there's a lot of open space that just isn't used for anything in the A-bomb site. Like when you come out of Long A, not the barn Long A, but like the main archway, like to your right, there's just so much floor space there that it just feels kind of weird. And I also just felt like there's way too much stuff you can boost on top of inside of the site. Like you can boost on top of both barn doors. You can boost on top of the boxes and spawn, which is a super powerful angle. It's just so many like boost spots on the site. I know a lot of people talked about this actually. Also, you can see Long A from like Big Barn over by B if you get on top of the railings of the stairs. And it felt like, I don't know, like there's no risk doing it, it felt like, either, because you have a lot of cover from that spot. Obviously, it takes you out of maybe guarding a bomb site or puts you out of position to help within a rotating situation. But it did feel like there were things like that I felt maybe could be looked into. But in general, I thought it was a positive overhaul. What are your guys' thoughts about these like boost spots I'm talking about, by the way? Since a lot of people did bring this up like on Reddit and stuff when it first came out.
I'm not a big fan of having even more angles to worry about. The boosts are often OP, and there is a boost on A that you can just you can get yourself boosted on there and just sit there for the rest of the round, wait till they plant, not show before they jump in, just wait till they plant and then just have a free kill. Just have a free kill because there's 3-4 more angles.
Yeah.
Yeah, allies need to worry about, and that's I don't know, I'm not really not a fan of something like that happening.
What about you, Lex? Do you feel like these boosts are a problem on the A-bomb site, having so many?
Well, I'd say in general, like, I agree. There at the A-bomb site in particular, even when I'm scoping, man, like, first I got to clear long A-barn, then I got to clear anything close arch. And then, like, you got to clear their spawn arch, you got to clear their trench, you got to clear their deep spawn arch, everything over around maze. And then you got to clear the top big barn peak, and you haven't even looked at the bomb site yet, let alone anything on the right side towards A barn or those like little craters that you can prone inside of on the right side of the A bomb site. Like, I would love to see both A and B kind of be cleaned up, and just make it so like there are obvious spots, like axis sided spots that you have to clear, and like kind of just renege on a lot of the weird spots that you can prone in and boost on top of. So yeah, I mean, I see both sides. I think it's cool to be able to boost and have like some advantages somewhere on a map, but there is, like you said, like even the white boxes behind a site, like you can sit up there, and then when you stand up, you see the entire map. Like,
yeah,
you can see all the way down mid, you can see all the way through long A. You can see
really?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
There's spots that just, and the only issue with that is like, I don't mind that someone can be boosted up there. It's the fact that there's like bushes in front of their face, and they're shooting from the top of their helmet right there as well. So it's like you can't see these people. You can't clear them out. There's no obvious way without a scope in a very good position for the allies that you can actually spot for that anyway.
Yeah.
So I agree that if you just eliminate some of the more nuanced stuff inside of the bomb sites, I feel like it'd be more approachable in general for both sides, not only just taking the bomb site, but retaking as well. But that's kind of the issue, right? Is like, if you get rid of a lot of these spots and you increase the bomb timer, and you probably going to be harder to retake and to hold the bomb site in general. So when we made that discussion earlier for clutching and stuff like that, that's like the biggest thing that you see, especially in like the younger players in the NA scene, people who maybe haven't had as much competitive experience. Like, when you're in those odd man situations and there's a retake scenario, like trying to play intelligently as an ally, like, and hold a bomb site, a lot of like the first instinct is to just go hide somewhere, when that's not always going to be the best way to play the situation. And so like when you're retaking, you instead of just trying to find out where opponents are, you're just clearing these ridiculous spots periodically and just hoping that somebody's prone inside of one, right. Which is what it is. But I think it definitely adds to kind of like the frustration factor on maps.
Yeah. So that'll do it for Manor V2. All right, and so now to talk about the last map change in Battalion, which is just the inclusion of a whole new map. It's good old ya boy Invasion, which I feel like has had kind of mixed responses. I personally don't know that I've gotten to play it enough to really have like a valid opinion, which I guess doesn't matter. You can have an opinion like all day long. It doesn't have to be a very good one. But at least I'm like honest enough to come out and say my opinion is probably pretty shit because I don't have enough data to support my said opinion. So I'm at least upfront with you about it instead of just talking out my ass. But anyway, you guys maybe perhaps have actual game time on it and could provide maybe a more instructed opinion. Davy, is that person you or is it not? And I got to go to Lex.
I haven't really played it that
well,
much.
That's the rest in peace right there, isn't it? So...
But what I feel like is I like B and I like mid. Well, I kind of like mid, but I think A needs the biggest change, like getting towards A. But outside that, I mean, as allies, right? Getting towards A. Outside that, I don't know. I'd need to play it a lot more. To be fair,
Lex.
But I feel like the people are pretty negative towards it.
Yeah.
Well, first I'll say like I've played it a lot in like unranked and pugs and whatever else. So I've played it plenty enough to know everything about it. I feel like. But I will say, I've scrimmed it less than 10 times, so I don't even have the sickest opinion competitively. But general opinion on it is I really like the general idea of the map.
Yeah.
And that's again another unpopular opinion from Lex, but like you can't get spam naded in spawn, hooray. You can't get sniped in spawn. Like the quickest rotation from the A bomb site to the B bomb site is 10 seconds. Like all the rotations kind of make sense as Axis. There's definitely some debate. I'm not too comfortable with the A bomb site is just super awkward. So when you actually come up the coast, you're exposed from like 3 or 4 different angles that you have to clear, and God forbid someone's prone anywhere on the bomb site. There's so much cover around there. And then the sniper nest is an awesome concept because once you get control of it, like you essentially have the site. So I like, in general, I really like the direction the map went, and I hope more maps are kind of like that, where the allies can get into a position to get sniped and spam naded, but it's not like inherently built into the map itself. And I'm a scope. I love those early sniper battles, so I'm maybe a weird position for me to take, but I will say that like in general, I think it's a really good start to a new map. I know they're still changing a lot of the stuff, and they've already said upon its release actually that like, hey, this isn't a finalized map. We're not even doing a mini map for it, but we're gonna put it out there and just see how it plays.
Yeah, I think that's a good mindset.
Even though my biggest gripe when it first came out was that coast going up to the A bomb site. One, because like with the lighting changes, it made it so allied player models were essentially invisible along the rocks. But then two was that like it was really awkward peeking it with a scope because like you would die and not know where the hell people were peeking you from. But the more and more I've played it, it actually kind of it's less so for the Axis, but the allies, like if you have any kind of a plan going into like an A rush, going up that coast side, first of all, you have the bottom orange area, kind of like little boiler room down there that the Axis get there first, and they have information that can be made. They can hold it right there, and you can't be seen from the top side of the A bomb site. So it's like a one-on-one dogfight with the SMGs and shotguns in that area, and I think that's pretty cool. I don't actually, after playing it for a while, I don't have a whole lot of issues with that entire side of the map as far as the coast goes, because like generally speaking, once you know where the Axis can peek you from safely, it's really easy to cover with a scope or even just a Garand at that range once you get halfway up. So I would say in general, I really like the map. I know I do agree though, Dust, is that like I feel like a lot of people just haven't given it enough of a shot to have a well-formulated opinion. But I just hope that like, because I see every other day on Reddit, it's like, please remove invasion from the map pool. And there are some uncomfortable things about it, like mid for allies is hella sketch. Like just there's so many different headshot angles that the Axis can be peeking you from. This little like curtain wall around a crater right outside of mid for Axis is like prone in head glitch city, where you can just like lay down, wait for a teammate to take a shot and spot them, stand up, get a 4K. Like there's a little things that I think can be done there. And once people start to learn things like set nades and set smokes on a map that inherently you don't need them as much as the other ones, like you don't need to smoke mid to get to a spot, I think there can be some definite improvements to make it a really good map. I think it's a great start.
I mean, here's the deal. We needed a D-Day map in this game, right? And I think that the idea of how they incorporated it by like not being on the beach itself, but like having the beach as like a backdrop on like the long area of the map is the perfect way to incorporate it. And still keep it like on a level playing field, because otherwise you'd be fighting uphill in a beach into a fort and it'd be like really weird, right? So I think that this is probably the best way that you could have a D-Day map in this game, the way they've designed the core of the map. But yeah, like you said, I think there's some issues at middle. I personally like all the orange rooms, like the circle orange and like the stairwells you go up. It's like, isn't it like 3 stories tall almost, or like kind of that part of the map really kind of irks me a little bit. Just because of how close quarters it all really is, and like it just seems like a nightmare in some situations. But again, I haven't played it enough to like really know how good or bad that particular
Yeah.
spot is. But the long area with the beach backdrop, I think is great. I didn't really have too much with the side on the other side of the map. It seemed pretty okay. But yeah, it just seems like it has a lot going on, you know. And I thought that was the same issue I had with Manor V2, was there's a lot going on, and they had to kind of simplify it. Is what the Manor V2 overhaul kind of simplified it a lot. And so maybe that's what Invasions needs, like a little bit of simplification, you know. But again, it's hard to know because I haven't played it enough. So I think I've only played it like twice. So
especially the orange area, like that's probably the least problematic place as far as like one-sided fights and things of that nature. Like I don't feel like it's OP one way or the other. Like as soon as you get an ally in, I mean, it's just as dangerous to be in there as an Nexus player because, like you said, there's definitely some close quarter battles. Like, I'll be walking through that with a scope, trying to rotate towards B, and just like find an allied shotgunner in my face. Like, what the fuck are you doing here? And like, you get a satisfying no scope or something, and it's just as kind of like awkward, I think, for anybody playing inside there, because if you're looking the wrong direction, you're dead. So, I just. The thing that I like about it the most, by far, is the first two things I mentioned, which is for like a new player coming into a map, you're not going to have in your face insane players 2 seconds out of the round shutting you down. One, and then two, you definitely have opportunities to rotate and clutch effectively as Axis and also as allies. Like if you wanted to go to B, like there's 4 or 5 different ways that you can get into that bomb site. That's might be an exaggeration, but there are some like confusing parts of the map too. Like the rotations from the Axis behind the B bomb site. Like me and my teammates kind of had this debate as well the other day, which is like, I think that's probably the most confusing part because there's just random stuff, little random tunnels that probably don't even need to be there. But overall, like I said earlier, I think it's got promise.
There you go. So let's talk esports, boys. Let's talk esports. That's what we're here for.
Esports.
That's what we really love.
What is that?
I don't know. Anyway, esports-wise, before we talked about like the actual tournaments and stuff, which we're really only going to talk about I-62 and then the idea of a mini major, and just like briefly cap that. But before we get into those two topics, I did want to just give a chance to like let you guys kind of express yourselves about your teams, because we all know that Davy, the king of assy ass over there from Europe, they've been a little bit quiet. They didn't play as many online tournaments as, say, like at the Bang or some of these other European teams. We haven't got to see you guys as much. I think you guys were only in one Blitzkrieg battle that I casted, but I know you guys played like fast frags and some other stuff like that, and I know you're in like a cup right now.
Yeah.
You still have the same 5, I'm pretty sure, that you had when you started. Yes? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
So how's it been? How's it been over there with the assy ass boys?
Well, we've been playing a lot actually, but like the Blitzkrieg is always on Saturdays, and we never have 5 on a Saturday, so that kind of sucks. And I actually talked to the admin today about it. I just asked if the Blitzkrieg is gonna keep on being on Saturday for Europe, and he said yes. So that's GG for us. And outside of that one Blitzkrieg, we played 2 fast frags. Well, in the Blitzkrieg thing, we came 3rd.
Yeah.
And fast frags, we both won. We won the 2 fast frags cups we played in, so that was good for us. But outside that, yeah, we just
Who did you
started
beat in those tournaments?
The Bang and Ocelots.
Okay, that's right.
In the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ocelots was like they called themselves Little Cats.
Yeah,
at that
because
point.
they only had like 2 or 3 of the actual Ocelots members on that team now.
Yeah.
Because like S Walker like quit. I think Elzoy quit as well. Or I don't know. Like I know S Walker quit.
Probably
to go play
hibernation.
PUBG. Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
he's playing PUBG, but Elzoy, I think he's like in hibernation or whatever. And
He was
Swaker,
playing with Little Cats a little bit.
I'm telling you, Swaker, he'll be back as fast as he left if the game gets picked up.
Yeah. That's probably fair enough. So.
But like Little Cats, they defeated the Bang, I think, when we beat them in the final. The Bang Endpoint being Endpoint.
Right.
There were definitely good teams in there. But we just started playing today in the 6G Cups. It's called. We have an interesting idea of having cups in 3 days. So today was the group stage, Wednesday is the playoffs, and Friday is the finals that we're gonna win.
There you go.
Outside that, no, I think we need more leagues though, like
Yeah.
matches to look forward to. I loved like how Clem-based did it. You had like one map a week, or like, one match a week, but you know which maps. So like in the entire week, you'd focus on those 2 maps,
Yep.
and then you know
Definitely one way to do it.
that was fun to have.
Lex, on the other hand, his team is like making moves, made some changes. I don't even know all of them. I know you brought in Hero for Fox Rocks. That was like a move that came up for you guys. But you also recently brought on another player, and I wasn't sure what happened there. So maybe you can talk us through like where your lineup's at right now, what's going on with your team.
Well, during the first month of the game, I think we went like a couple of weeks of not losing tournaments, and I don't know how many, maybe like 5 or 6 or something like that. And that was super fun because there was like, 20 teams in these tournaments. People were popping up and there was new teams all the time. And like within the span of like 2-3 weeks, maybe there was maybe 5 active teams at the end of it. And this is probably in the last week and a half or so that we just, for almost half a month, we like didn't play, and it was just we were scrimming the same 2 teams every night if we could get any at all. And it was really in a bad spot, and like all of my teammates kind of felt the same way as everyone else, which is like we don't have anything to compete for. The game is just, like the player count steadily dropping. Even if you wanted to stream and make content, like you couldn't queue unranked or comp or anything like that. So like you would stop laughing.
Barren
at
wastelands, Davy.
Yeah,
We're out here
this is what
struggling,
I mean,
Davy. You're out there in the Garden of Eden of Battalion in Euroland. We're out here struggling. All right.
We got ours.
I wake up and I watch the pro European Battalion players stream, and it's just like it's a treat to watch because it's like, wow, these guys like can pretty much play the game whenever they want. Like it was.
Yeah.
So frustrating.
Your boy Climax, who loves shouting out them clips every day on Steam.
Yeah.
Those guys stream so much. The sweetest guys. Holy fuck.
Climax, who's always
awesome.
on me on Steam. Check out this new clip, bruh. I'm like,
Hell yeah.
fair enough.
Tweet
Anyway,
please.
so what happened to your team, Lex?
So that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, it's like in pretty much all the other good teams that we were playing against. There was like there was no fast guns, there was man.
Janitors.
I just had a total. Oh yeah, Janitors is dead. Like there's a bunch of different teams that we were playing against. Dream Team died for several times actually. Like there's just when you have a situation where your roster just like wants to go play Fortnite or whatever else because there's nothing to do in Battalion. Like it was a daily basis where we would like message a team to scrim and they're like, we decided last night we're not going to play the game anymore, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, I don't know. See you later, I guess. And
Right.
And so like we kind of fell apart, and it was like a 2 weeks of just like you said, barren wasteland, and I couldn't get my team on to practice or to scrim, and I couldn't blame them. Like, how can I, just because I'm somebody who sits at home and I work from home and this is what I do. Like, how can I ask these guys to come on and scrim the same team every night on the same 4 maps or whatever?
Right.
It was a bad spot, and this last week and a half or so, I basically just like said to my maybe it was like 2 weeks ago, but I basically said like, hey, I understand if you guys don't want to play right now or you're not super motivated, but like I want to play. So if the 5 of us or some combination of the 5 of us want to keep playing, like let's do it. And yeah, so we basically took 3 players that said at least that they wanted to be super active. And like the other 2 players that we had were phenomenal. In fact, Fox Rocks, because we had been taking that break, went and started playing with Exodus, who is arguably probably the best team in NA right now. I'd say like them and Sedated. And so like I was happy for him. It was like, if you have an opportunity to go play for an active team, like go for it. And so yeah, that team? Yeah, Grego's. I'm hanging on to Grego, dude. That guy's not leaving my squad.
So it's you, Grego, Hero,
Blade, and JC Standy right now. And these guys, like, I have 2 18-year-olds on my team, and 3 of the guys are still in school. So like,
so what happened with Spurks? Is he just taking leave? from Battalion?
I think he just like wasn't super motivated to be competing.
Yeah,
I don't blame
I
him
kind
for
of got that
like,
vibe from talking to him that he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do. So
yeah,
okay.
Spurks was super good. He was a good teammate, so I liked
Yeah.
playing with all those guys. And it was definitely a spot where for us it was unfortunate. We were all depressed. Nobody wanted to like put time into the game, and so like when you see all the other good teams also kind of folding in that time frame, that was the mentality of NA was, like we're just gonna wait and see when the leagues come out. And actually, I think it's the plays is doing an open league for NA right now, and I think we had like 4 or 5 active teams as of last week. There's 12 total signed up, and I think they're hoping to have 16 by the end of tomorrow. So I mean, like already in the span of the last 10 days or so, there's been huge growth for competitive teams to start rising again. So that's like big thumbs up to the plays for trying to put on a league and getting it out to the players. They actually kind of have been doing it through Reddit and actually being able to post in Discords and get the word out to people. So I mean, it's not surprising to me that now that people know about these things, they're signing up for it. But it makes me hopeful, man. Like, I would love to start seeing now that like comp and unranked are popping, and now that there's a league popping up and there's already talks about Face It and whatever else down the road, like players are already messaging me like, oh, can you start scrimming the game again? Like, is there something to play for? Can we start queuing comp? And it's like, yes to all those things. Like it's back on the rise, so I'm excited about it.
There you go.
There's gonna be a LAN in Budapest.
Yeah, Gallantry.
Gallantry. It has 73 interested teams.
So that's good.
That's not bad to have, and 6 that have paid by now, and it's only in July or something. So
yeah, there you go. Cool stuff.
Stuff is happening. It's just far away.
Let's talk about I-62 really quick. This was the first LAN for Battalion. It was at Birmingham at I-62. It was a 10,000 pound tournament. I was a little sad because I was going to be casting this, but unfortunately things didn't work out. But I want to give a huge shout out to Mitchman and Hawka because they marathon the shit out of this tournament. I can tell you from personal experience, it is not easy to just do 12-hour days back to back, no break, no other commentators to rotate in with you. That's a lot. In CS, we had the luxury of having budgets where we can afford multiple people to where you can rotate in and out, unless you're on the analyst desk and you're actually kind of just effed, like you do just work 12-hour days, which I'm about to be doing that for 4 days here very soon in the Starlighter Studios for a tournament. But no, so shout out to Hawka and Mitchman for grinding it out. I actually worked with Mitchman a little bit for some of the online Blitzkrieg battles, and fun tournament to watch. I hope to be at tournaments in the future myself as a commentator, but it was fun to sit back and watch this one. A little bit of some turns in this one. Penta winds up going third. They were the favorite to win the whole thing, I think, in a lot of people's eyes. I thought it was going to be Endpoint Penta in the finals is how I had mapped it out in my head, because obviously Endpoint, people will know the core of this team as the Bang that did really well in a lot of online tournaments, particularly like J Money got a lot of attention. Some people calling him out, which was total bullshit. But also people respecting him as a really good player early on. So J Money got his at this tournament. Also, they had Sus, Saint Six, Fancy, and then their new scope, which was Icons, because before they were using Deleter. And then I think they had someone else like very briefly, like Beaksy or something. And then they picked up Icons like basically right before this LAN. And they wound up winning the whole thing in a very close best of 5 in the grand finals against Avenue, which actually went all 5 maps on that final day on stage. So yeah, I think in general, like Endpoint, Penta for me were going to be top 3 teams, and they wound up being top 3 teams. So I just thought Penta and Endpoint would be in the finals. They actually played each other in the lower bracket finals, and Endpoint won at 2-0. So that is just a couple of like little quick notes. Those were like the 3 biggest names in the tournament besides Panthers, who had been playing online a little bit. The rest were kind of mixed teams, it seemed like. What did you guys think about this tournament, for the first LAN for Battalion?
Well, I was out on the weekend with family. I didn't get the chance to see a lot of it. I saw clips of Mark going nuts with a 4K MP44. I just saw a part of the VOD of the finals today, which I saw that the casters were doing a good job. That was good to see. It's not easy, I bet, in a new game. But I think it's cool that people like J Money, who were accused for cheating and stuff early on online, that he showed his worth, and he's really a talented player. And I like narratives like this, stories like that, growing in new scenes. So it's fun to have, and I think Endpoint is a deserved winner. Also, going off of the practice scrims before the weeks before I-Series, Endpoint felt like the strongest team going in, and that showed. So that's cool to have. And also, like, I saw like old people from back in the day, playing like Mark and Kozja, and that's cool to see. Like, people are back.
See, I didn't know much about Avenue. I knew Endpoint and Penta pretty well. Penta, yeah, they wound up just not getting as far as... But it's fair enough they lost to Endpoint in lower bracket finals. That's the team I thought they would maybe lose to in the finals. Like, I thought the Bang and Penta would be like a really hot matchup, and we wound up getting it just not in the finals. Because Avenue actually knocked Penta down in the upper bracket, which was a little bit of an upset, I think. In fact, it was quite the upset. Replan was exactly what I expected. Rep LAN, there you go, that LAN at the end, baby. But yeah, just they I don't know, they wound up getting a disappointing result. I think they were expecting a finals appearance and maybe the title for what they had been kind of chalked up as from online results and the roster they put together. But it's still definitely a lot of fun to watch. Lex, what were your thoughts? Because I know I saw you in chat quite often while I was in there myself, and we were chatting it up with some people and watching games. So what did you think?
I mean, Dust, even in private, like I told you straight up my thoughts on it beforehand. Like, you should be thankful that you're not at this LAN, Dust. Like, this thing is going to be
I wanted to be there. I'm
be
so sad.
Spectators,
I wanted to be there.
Like, no, I'm just messing. But like, I was expecting worst case scenario for delays and just having it kind of hard to watch. But I was kind of blown away. I mean, there was certainly some. If you watch for 5 minutes, you'd see a dozen bugs within the spectator UI and going on in game.
Yeah,
but
player bars are still really rough.
It was nowhere near as bad as it had been online in previous tournaments. And honestly, like, I was kind of also had my eyes open to just how spectator friendly the game feels right now. I watched, I'd say, like 85%, like definitely above 75, just like not quite 100. I maybe missed some of the play matches, but somewhere in that range. Like, I caught most of it, man, and it was enjoyable to watch. And I was part of like a bunch of NA players that were waking up early essentially to go watch them. And I caught like only 3 maps of the finals, and I rewatched 2 of them the first 2 maps last night. Very, very pleasantly surprised at how well it went. And how enjoyable it was to watch. And certainly a lot of that is aided to the fact that the matches were really good. You had upsets. You had even the ones that were supposed to be one-sided, like, would end up being close somehow. Every other game was OT. Yeah, every other game was OT, and it was just like on edge. And that's the one thing is like, yeah, there's a lot of things that can obviously be cleaned up, from having MR3 overtime ready to go to having spectator UI fixes.
Yeah, player bars are still dumpster fires, unfortunately.
Yeah, if you're talking about like a time frame for that stuff to be implemented, like, the devs have all the time in the world to get that stuff ironed out. But the fact that it's already watchable and enjoyable at this point made me kind of just like breathe a sigh of relief, because it's, if that thing was a fiasco to watch from start to finish, then it just means, the groundhog or friggin' what's the Groundhog Day didn't see his shadow, so you got another 6 weeks of winter. The equivalent to that would be like something like we got another 2 months of Reddit trolls posting about how this game's terrible on LAN and the game's dead. So it's like you can't really argue with how fun that was to watch. I think there was almost as much as 1,000 viewers for the finals. So like, the fact that people were tuning in at all is just great to see. I mean, if you have the entire player base of the game, which is right now, it seems like way less than 1,000, right? If you just have those people tuning in, and you have like 200 viewers, I guess on a grand finals match.
It still does think, because I remember the first online event we did for Blitzkrieg, we had over 2K viewers, and it kind of cut in half every other online event after that until we got down to like the next event was 1,000, the next event was 500, the next event was 250, and that's kind of where it stopped. 250 was just kind of like, the max viewer count. This event maintained like 200 to 600 most of the way through, and like I said, it got up to near 1,000 for the finals. I guess not a bad starting point, especially like you said, based on the player base count we have right now, and the fact that it is still. It was also a smaller event, and like if we're 100% honest, like not a lot of the top European teams went. Like you know, Davy's team wasn't there. Obviously, the best team in Europe, right? So they weren't there. So you know, obviously not even counting
by
anymore,
many
of
people.
course. But
At least 5.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, like we had Endpoint and Penta, and those were names. And the Avenue, like you said, they had like veteran names, stuff like that. But I had never seen them really play online coming into this tournament. And I know Imperial had like a weird roster situation coming into the event, where they had to get like a last minute huh?
Duffer baited them.
Duffer.
Which sucks because I feel
Duff.
like Duffer is like one of the sickest SMGs in the game. Even if the SMG is kind of in a weird place right now, like him, Toxia, and probably like J Money were some of the best SMGers in Europe, and it would have been cool to see him there. And then yeah, apparently some shit happened with that. And
I think they had to buy 2 BIOC places for him. That was a problem. There was no budget.
in case you guys are wondering, it's because Duffer's jacked as shit. So we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, so I think overall it was definitely cool to watch. I think it was definitely not a bad like test run, I guess you can say, because I mean this event again was definitely like a smaller community event. Certainly did have some backing by Bulkhead as far as like prize pool and the gold skins and stuff like that, but that was mostly just to test out gold skins. And I think in the future gold skins are going to be reserved just for majors, not for every single LAN tournament, but because this was the first one, they kind of made an exception. So yeah, definitely a fun event. I need to go back and watch some VODs to like really get a feel for it, but certainly enjoyed watching it, and it was cool to see some of the top teams at least get to play. Which leads us to our last topic, which is the future of esports for this game. And we know that there's been hinting about Face It, there's been hinting about ESL UK. I've heard hints about other TOs that are certainly interested that I've talked to personally, but I feel like out of respect for them, I probably shouldn't drop their names because I don't know if they want people to know that they're interested. But certainly there's some different orgs that are interested in throwing online and perhaps offline tournaments in the future for the game, so that's good to hear. But the mini major is supposed to be coming up in either September or August, like August-September time frame, I think is what Brammer said in Twitch chat. I know that I've heard like perhaps around a $50,000 prize pool is being thrown around as like a number. Though that's not finite, not set in stone. Could be a little bit less, could be a little more. Just know it's the ballpark they're working with. Also, like regional qualifiers are being discussed for Europe, NA, and I think one other region, maybe Oceania. I'm not really sure what the third region's supposed to be, but I know it's supposed to be 3 regions.
Brammer has talked about like the Oceania region as well, so that would be cool.
So regional qualifiers for it, you know, LAN event for it, and the end of it. Certainly something I hope to be a part of. Certainly something I hope you guys are a part of as competitors. What are your guys' thoughts about a major coming? 'Cause I know there's been a lot of debate on whether it's too soon to have a major, whether we should be calling it a major, whether we should just be calling it something else and reserving the word major for like future tournaments that are like bigger and more prestigious. But this is meant to be a prestigious event because of the prize pool they're talking about. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are about this whole mini major concept.
I think calling it a major is probably not that bad because it's going to be like the first really big thing for Battalion, and I think that will just attract a larger crowd if you call it a major, plus have some good money in it. But like I can't wait for it to happen because I'm a competitive player. I just want to play LANs. I'm sick of online stuff, so I just want it to happen as fast as possible. If it's good or bad for the game, I'm just my mindset is so competitive. I just want to be playing it. So for me, it's just a good thing. Thing is, iSeries went pretty well. It seems I couldn't really watch it a lot of it, but and that's like really early on, right? So
Yeah.
it's only upwards from here, and I imagine that it's going to be even a much better spectating experience by August, September, after the major update as well. So I think it should be good, and we might even get some cool orgs involved by then to boost it even more. I'm really excited for that.
Lex, any general thoughts about this major, mini major,
Yeah.
what have you?
the previous time frame for it was like May and June, which like now that we're kind of here in April, it's like
Too soon.
that would be very quick to have qualifiers for it, updates out to make it spectator friendly and have the game actually like look really good if you're gonna play it. Like I get why they're pushing that back, but I agree. Like I just want to frag at this point, so it's my opinion's gonna be on one side, and the reality of how it probably should be will be in the opposite spectrum. So I get it. And again, I think the biggest thing is like when they do decide to market the game and when they are pushing the major and they are at least exposing the game to a much wider audience, it's going to be it's kind of out of our hands as players to display that as best as possible, right? Because it's like it's all bulkhead. They want to put the major on, they want to display it. It's going to be on their terms and the best the game can look at that point. So it is what it is. But I think that's something that players will have to look forward to and get excited about. And kind of in contrast to what Davey was saying is I would say that like in the meantime, in between now and whatever that major is going to be, as long as there's still some kind of online development for the scene's competitive teams, giving us something to play for, whether it's, an open facet ladder or it's a league or whatever else. There's like little stop gaps that'll keep us alive until then through the plays and whatever else, as far as keeping people motivated and interested to keep testing the game. But on the other side of that is there is like when the rubber hits the road and when this starting to actually become real, as far as wanting to qualify for a major or what else, like you have to have teams already striving to that point by the time they get there. Like you can't just break into a run and like announce a major and have people that have never played the game signing up and trying to go and compete at it. Like there's got to be a level of competition to the point where it's going to be enjoyable when it gets to land. There's going to be some advanced stuff by the time it gets to land. And so the reason I think I-62 was so successful is not only were good teams on display that still I think haven't necessarily developed tactically and strategically as deep as the game can be.
Yeah, definitely.
It still was an awesome display of like individual skill and was fun to watch. Sure. So I think that's kind of like, I think the game itself is already pretty close to being able to be, on a stage and have people pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. But the rest of the infrastructure and kind of developing whether it's a UI and it's Spec UI and it, anything that has to do with just how the game can be perceived from a spectator. And when you're talking about Wartide 2 and things like that, like there is some ground that needs to be tread before it's like, definitely you have everybody on the same page that is like, this game's ready for a major, like let's get on with it, right? Because as competitive players, like Davey said, we're ready to do it right now, but like
I think it is scary to think about a major coming this soon, August, September, because if the major update's not until July, that only gives people like a month or two to play Wartide 2 before the major is on the horizon, like, or is happening. Mm-hmm. And like the qualifiers for the major would then basically have to happen almost directly after the major update, which again doesn't leave a whole lot of time to get used to Wartide 2 before you're starting to qualify for a major. I also think that it's just a little too early to call it a major. I think you could still grab a lot of attention if you labeled it like the Bulkhead Invitational. So you put the developer's name on it. I think that on it, or call it the Square Enix Invitational. Whatever the case may be. I think if you put that
brand,
the
Shroud Ninja Dr. Disrespect Invitational.
Yeah. Like you don't have to call the major and still make it like you can still make it huge and make people understand this is big, without having to call it a major. Like I said, an invitational with the right branding around it, Balkan Invitational, Square Enix Invitational, whatever the case may be. The prize pool itself will speak for itself as far as it being substantial enough to make it a major tournament. But I think you should reserve major for like next year when you've really gotten like everything ironed out, like Wartide 2's ironed out. People have had some, because here's the thing, like if the major is in September, August, how many lands will have even happened by then before the major? Like, I feel like you got to build up the land circuit a bit more before you start throwing a major out there. Like, I think, like, yeah, we have Gallantry. Yeah, we've had, I-62. But I don't know if there will even be any more lands before the major at that point. Like, unless they wind up making one somewhere, like, that we just haven't heard about yet.
There's talks of a Benelux-oriented land.
And I mean, I've heard that we could see it in some other TOs, like part of some of their stops across the nation and stuff like that, or the world. So maybe we will see a couple other lands pop up before then. But I do think that they'd be better off like labeling it like as a type of invitational. Still have qualifiers, but invite like top teams, like invite Endpoint who just won this or something like that. Invite Penta, invite some of these teams that are like real established, but definitely give people a way to qualify in. But again, I think you should save the word major for when you're really ready to throw something super huge and everything's on point. And people have had time to actually compete in other lands and compete in the new update and like have enough time to really build it up to what you want it to be. And I realized that like CSGO's first major wasn't crazy either.
Super janky.
Yeah. So there is an argument to be made that your first major doesn't have to be a fucking Grand Slam, that it really can be just like the start of something, the start of progressing towards something huge. But and it's all semantics too, like major versus invitational. It's just a word, you know. So maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh there, but it does seem like it's still a little bit rushed when you consider the timing of their next major update and everything.
I think you have a point. I mean, like a year from now, when you're like eyeing the second or third major or whatever has been going on in the game, and the game's completely different, and there's like a whole different set of top teams and star players and whatever else, like people won't be looking through any, like when you talk about like NIP in the early days of CSGO, like nobody contextualizes that as being like, yep, NIP was still like the greatest team of all time, and there's nothing else that you can say about it. Well, like, no, there's reason enough for debate, and like those majors weren't nearly the same level of competition or hype or just like
it's true,
money on the line and whatever else. Like, yeah, I totally see what you're saying. I just think like the devs have come out and openly said it, and it's like the most honest thing that you can say about hosting a big money tournament like that early and whatever else is like, it's strictly a marketing tool. Just like trying to get exposure for the game and have people come out for it. But it kills two birds with one stone, because me and Davey are sitting right here on your podcast, us, and like that's what we want to do, right? Is like we want that experience, and we want something to play for. So
absolutely,
like, yes, certainly like the credibility of like the competitive scene at that point will, you know, looking back in hindsight, will be like nowhere near, you know, the level of completeness that a major a year from now will have. But I don't hate that they call it that. I don't think it's a big deal.
Like I'm certainly still excited for it, regardless of what they call it, right? Like it'll be cool to see like a really big event this year. It also just proves that they're behind it, right? Like, because they've been talking about how Square Enix is definitely behind it, and seeing them involved and seeing a bigger tournament would definitely go a long way towards proving that, like, hey, we're invested in this. And again, it's something that I think we'd all love to be a part of. Like everyone in the community who's been like grinding it out for the last like year. Like us three here have been a part of like the earliest alphas. We've been hanging around for, you know, 2 years, year and a half. Like, so it would be great to finally have something that we can all celebrate together. So yeah, I think it's a semantics thing when I say like maybe it should be labeled differently. I think it's still going to be great, and I'm happy to see it coming this year. Davey, do you want to leave a last remark on this before we?
Were you calling it a mini major earlier?
That's what they kind of said. Like I think he said it like in Twitch chat, like mini major or like.
That I wouldn't call it.
Like well, they're not gonna call it a mini major. No, like they're not gonna. That's not gonna be the. That's not. Minor, yeah, that's not gonna be the branding. It'll probably just be called the major or like a minor maybe, or like an invitational. Like they're not gonna say mini major, but that's just kind of how it's being referred to. Right. So yeah, that's that.
Well, I'm happy that, you know, we know it's coming. I'd love to see ESL get like the Go 4 cups, you know, Go 4 Battalion. You know those cups? It's like every Sunday or whatever, a couple of €100.
Yeah, I feel like it's only a matter of time before, like, we have a lot of grassroots things going on right now, but I feel like it's only a matter of time before you start seeing like big TOs that are recognizable start throwing online cups as well, just to kind of get their feet wet in the game. Again, I've already heard of at least 2 like recognizable orgs that are interested in doing online cups at the very least, if not more. So we will have to see.
Parameter has been saying that Faceit is supposed to be huge.
Yeah, so that's not one of the 2 I was already talking about. So that's the third that that's already been named. But there's a couple that have not been named that are interested, from my understanding. So there you go. So all right. Last thoughts before we sign off this second episode of In the Trenches, before we we hit that stop button. Last thoughts. I'll give you guys the last word.
Last word. Oh man. Sleep tight. I'm tired as fuck.
There you go. All right, Lex, you got a final word here before we close her out.
I guess the only thing I'd really say is like kind of going back to the NA specific stuff is like the game itself, obviously, like love it or hate it, no matter what your opinion is on it, like there's a lot of awesome people in the community that are trying to come together and actually like give this game the proper kind of recognition it should get by people that are passionate about it in some way. Even just like being able to play the game on the dev servers, like I really am a strong believer that like the COD communities, like Davey was saying earlier, like have always relied upon community efforts to make the scene what it is. And unfortunately, like whether or not you're doing something positive or negative in the community, it's always going to be amplified when you have a smaller like audience, right? Like a more concentrated group of people that are playing the game. And so like if you're still interested in playing Battalion or still trying to get into Battalion, there's no better time to get into it than like right now before, you know, the competition starts to pick up, teams start actually dedicating like months rather than a couple weeks towards getting better and learning the game. There's a lot to look forward to, and certainly the game has a long way to go. No one's debating that, but it's a once in a lifetime thing to have a dev team that like is this dedicated to making this game not only just playable but just enjoyable for everyone and making it kind of a centerpiece in esports. So, you know, who knows what's going to happen with it, but I'm hopeful, man.
I hear you. So that's going to do it for the second episode of In the Trenches. We hope to have another one for you in the near future, but hopefully you guys will enjoy this. I know it was a bit of a break, but again, we're trying to arrange schedules and things have been popping off last minute for me in particular as far as traveling a lot. So, but we got it done. We got her done. We're going to get this out, and we thank you all so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow and subscribe for more of these and other Battalion content on the YouTube channel here. You can also make sure you follow all of us on Twitter. Twitters are on the screen the whole entire time, so I feel like it's pretty easy for you to locate. So definitely give everyone a follow. And yep, catch you next time. Thanks a lot.
See ya.